My beloved child, this is not just another day. The fire you thought would consume you has already refined you, and what was meant to leave you in ashes has crowned you in gold. Every tear, every hidden battle, every storm you survived has brought you to this exact moment. Do not mistake this word as ordinary. It carries the very key to your breakthrough. Stay until the end, because what I release here will mark the line between who you were and who you are becoming. Miss this, and you risk missing what heaven has already stamped with your name. This is urgent, this is now, and this is your crossing. When the fire scorched your peace and singed your hope, you kept standing even when the ground beneath you melted. That fire wasn't meant to burn your life down. It was meant to burn off everything that couldn't go with you into the next chapter. And now I say to you with urgency and love, the flames have died down because the assignment of the fire is complete. What you feared would consume you has now refined you. You are stronger than before. Your spirit carries the scent of heaven's authority. The enemy hoped that fire would leave you as ashes, but I have raised you into gold. Do not keep reliving what is already over. It's time to rise from the ruins. Open your spirit today, because I'm pouring fresh oil where the fire once raged. You were not forsaken. You were forged. The fire didn't kill you, it crowned you. This is not just the end of heat, it's the start of holy empowerment. The unseen burden. You didn't cry out loud, but I heard the heaviness in every silent step. The world didn't see the cost, but I did. Your burden wasn't just a season, it became part of your breath, part of your daily movement. And yet you kept walking. You rose each day like a warrior disguised as a weary soul, carrying emotional wounds like invisible chains. And I took note of every footstep. Child, I watched you wrestle with thoughts you didn't share, with doubts you couldn't voice, and with a weight you thought was yours alone to carry. But I want you to hear me now with urgency. There wasn't a single step I didn't record in my heavenly scroll. Every pace you pushed forward under pressure was worship to me. I saw when you wanted to give up, but chose instead to trust me in secret. The burden was a test not of how loud you could shout, but how deeply you could trust in the quiet. And you passed. You passed without applause, without validation, without crowds cheering you on. I will reward that kind of faith because it wasn't performance, it was perseverance. I'm lifting the weight off now. Let this moment mark the release. The load is no longer yours to carry. I've assigned my angels to where your soul has struggled. What broke your back will break your future. Open up your heart today. This is your sacred release. A weight that followed you into this season is not allowed to follow you out of it. The reason it felt so intense, so relentless, so personal, is because it wasn't merely a hardship, it was a holy transformation. This wasn't about getting through the day, child. This was about what was being built in you with every hour that passed. You weren't just surviving difficult circumstances, you were being shaped in them. I wasn't just watching your pain, I was allowing it to become the furnace that turned your soft faith into steel. This was never just about whether you would endure, it was about who you would become once the dust settled. You see, I don't waste tests. I don't let you walk through shadows for nothing. Every tear, every sleepless night, every anxious breath was a piece of the construction plan. I was crafting something eternal while you thought you were just trying to breathe. And now I say this with all urgency. Look again. Look at who you have become. You don't respond like you used to. You don't doubt like you did before. Your steps are firmer, your prayers have fire, your worship has weight. You have become the very thing the enemy tried to destroy. Unstoppable. This test wasn't punishment, it was preparation. And you passed because you allowed the breaking to become building. Do not underestimate what just took place inside you. You are not who you were before this test began. You've crossed over into a new realm of spiritual maturity. And now that you've passed, I am releasing the next level of purpose. You are ready for what's coming because I used what was hard to make you holy. The voice in the storm. I let the thunder shake your calm and the winds scream around your peace, not to frighten you, but to expose the might of your faith beneath it all. You see, I never doubted you, but I had to allow you to discover that the roar within you could rival the rage outside you. The storm wasn't meant to drown you. It was meant to reveal the power I planted in you long ago. When the world felt like it was collapsing and the skies refused to show you light, your spirit, though trembling, didn't collapse. You stayed standing, even while the wind tried to push you into silence. And every time fear said, "Be quiet," your spirit whispered, "Cared." My name louder. That whisper was your roar. You didn't always shout, but your trust became thunder in the heavens. That roar wasn't noise, it was resistance. You resisted hopelessness, despair, and spiritual retreat when everything around you screamed, "Surrender." That was your true victory. You didn't need to outrun the storm, child. I was showing you that your voice in the middle of chaos could bring calm to your atmosphere. While you waited for me to still the winds, I was waiting for you to rise in the storm. Your roar was faith clothed in fire, defying the noise with quiet, unshakable belief. That's what moved heaven. That's what shook the enemy. You see, storms don't test weak hearts. They challenge hearts I've already strengthened. You didn't even realize that your foundation had become immovable. Not because you had no fear, but because you refused to be led by it. And now, as the last cloud dissolves and the wind finally dies down, I need you to understand something vital. This wasn't a weather event. It was a spiritual confirmation. You're no longer who you were when the first raindrop fell. You are the one who stood when others ran for cover. You are the one who praised in the middle of the flood. You are the one who didn't let go when lightning cracked above your head. And for that, I mark you as one who carries the sound of revival, not because you preached, but because you persevered. The roar you found in the middle of that storm wasn't borrowed. It was born. And I will now use it to shake the very places that once tried to silence you. This is why I allowed the storm. This is why I let the roar echo, not to destroy you, but to awaken you to the authority you forgot you had. And now, walk forward with the certainty that if a storm couldn't stop you, nothing ahead can either. Holding on in the unknown, the pressure came from every side, like hands tightening around your resolve, trying to make you bend until you shattered. But you didn't. You didn't collapse under what was designed to destroy you. Even when your thoughts warred within, even when fear crawled under your skin and whispered that you were finished, you kept your back straight and your heart open. I watched you sit in moments where silence screamed louder than words, where expectations from others became like chains, and where your own questions clawed at your faith. Yet you didn't give in to the collapse. That was not weakness. I saw it as power disguised as endurance. Every crack that formed under the strain was a testimony that you were holding something bigger than anyone knew. and you held it with grace. You held it with trembling hands, but you never dropped what I gave you. You could have walked away when understanding felt out of reach, but instead, you walked further into the dark, into the unknown, into the unspoken. And there, you found me. I was never counting how many times you stumbled. I was watching how many times you chose not to stay down. That is what made heaven stand still in awe of your strength. You didn't fold when doors slammed. You didn't fold when betrayal struck without warning. You didn't fold when you had to watch others get celebrated while you stayed hidden. That resistance wasn't accidental. It was spiritual warfare in silence. You made choices in private that protected your calling in public. What others would have forfeited, you covered in prayer. What others would have cursed, you carried with trust. And I need you to know that none of it went unnoticed. I was taking a record of every moment you looked like you were on the edge of breaking, but still whispered, "Lord, I trust you." That whisper moved mountains. That whisper split heavens. That whisper is why you're still standing. While others wondered how, I reinforced your walls when you felt like you were crumbling. I sent strength into your spine when no one was around to hold you. You may not have realized it then, but every time you chose not to fold, you were marking the enemy's failure to destroy you. He tried everything. He used time, people, lack, and disappointment, even every storm we had, but your spirit outlasted it all. And now I stand before you, not with correction, but with confirmation. You passed something that was designed to make others quit. You endured what was structured to wear down your identity. You survived what was supposed to make you surrender. And that kind of resilience will be honored by heaven in ways you cannot yet imagine. I will build on this foundation because it is unshakable. I will multiply the strength that was proven under pressure. What didn't break you will now be the reason you break through. The power of mercy. There were moments when retaliation sat just beneath your tongue, ready to respond to the wounds they inflicted. When cruelty came clothed in smiles, when betrayal wore the face of friendship, when false accusations tried to poison your spirit. You could have fought back with bitterness. You had every earthly right to strike with the same venom that was hurled your way, but you didn't. You restrained the desire for revenge and allowed mercy to stand in its place. Child, that choice echoed louder than thunder in the courts of heaven. While others looked for weakness in your compassion, I saw the might of my spirit rising in you. You chose love not because it was the easy thing, but because it was the right thing, and it cost you. It cost you the satisfaction of immediate vindication. It cost you the relief of confrontation. It cost you the upper hand in conversations no one else could hear. But that kind of obedience, when no one is watching, carries a fragrance that moves me deeply. You weren't soft. You were strong enough to carry grace into a place that was dripping with offense. Do you realize how rare that is? You loved without agenda. You forgave without receiving an apology. You didn't wait for change to come before you offered release. That is heaven's kind of love. Unearned, unlimited, unshakable. Every time you silenced offense, you declared that your spirit was governed by eternity, not emotion. You rewrote the atmosphere in rooms where bitterness was the default response. You turned the tables on the enemy's plan by refusing to mimic his tactics. And in doing so, you gave me access to move in ways that only love can unlock. Don't think for a moment that your gentleness was wasted. I saw when you hugged the ones who hurt you. I saw when you gave your time to those who took from you. I saw when you prayed for those who never once prayed for you. You didn't love out of overflow. You loved from sacrifice. And that's why I am now placing a spiritual mark on your life that no hatred can erase. You passed a test that most never even recognize. You proved that your heart is mature enough to carry blessing without it turning into pride. And because of that, I am opening doors that were locked by offense. I am releasing clarity where confusion was allowed to linger. I am restoring what bitterness tried to block. You didn't just survive betrayal, you purified it with love. And that love is now your weapon. You'll use it to heal places that others can only touch with pain. What tried to corrupt your soul has become the proof that you carry my nature. And I will build through you because you refused to build walls when you could have. You chose the narrow road, and that road leads directly into the center of my promises. Staying planted. There were days when everything in you screamed to escape the chaos, the unanswered questions, the aching loneliness of standing in the middle of a promise that hadn't yet come alive. You watched others walk away, choose comfort over calling, and vanish when the pressure got too real. And you could have joined them. No one would have blamed you. You had valid reasons to give up, strong justifications to walk away, and a heavy heart that begged for relief. But you didn't. You stayed. You stayed not because it was painless, but because you knew I hadn't released you. You stayed in the assignment, in the relationship, in the unfamiliar place where it looked like nothing was moving forward. And that obedience, that painful, quiet, uncelebrated obedience, it shook things in the unseen realm. I saw when your feet wanted to run, but your spirit said, "No, I'm planted here." And that choice became a memorial before me. You stayed when staying made you feel small. You stayed when leaving looked like freedom. You stayed when everything dry in your soul told you there was nothing left to hold on to. But even when you were holding on by a thread, you were still holding me. That's what sets you apart. You weren't waiting for signs, you were anchored in my voice. And because you didn't run, I was able to finish what I started in you. Do you realize how rare that is? Most walk away during the final stretch, unaware that their breakthrough was only a few more faithful steps away. But you didn't abort the process. You endured the discomfort of transition. You embraced the unknown. You pressed through the fatigue of unanswered prayers. That's what qualified you for what's being released now. You didn't just pass a test. You lasted a temptation that has derailed many. The temptation to flee, to numb, to disappear. But you chose presence over escape. And now my presence will reward your sacrifice. Staying wasn't a sign of weakness. It was proof of inner strength, forged in surrender. And I'm not only honoring your endurance, I'm multiplying the impact of it. Your staying didn't just preserve your path, it preserved others who were watching you. They saw your integrity in silence, your tears behind closed doors, your loyalty when no one was loyal to you. And because you stayed, they believed they could too. What you thought was private pain became public seed. And I am watering every part of your life that felt barren because of what you refused to abandon. This is your appointed time, and you're not just going to recover. You're going to reign. Tears as treasures. You thought no one heard the shaking in your voice when you whispered prayers through clenched teeth. That your tears disappeared into the night without witness. But I collected every single one. Those were not wasted drops of emotion. They were precious declarations of your faith under fire. They were not signs of your weakness. They were evidence of your war. Each one carried the weight of what you couldn't say out loud, what you couldn't share with others, what only I could understand. You held it all inside with trembling courage, and you poured out your sorrow in moments that felt unseen. But I was there. I hovered in the stillness. I bent low when the world seemed too loud to hear your soul's whisper. I recorded each tear as an offering of trust, an incense that rose higher than 1,000 spoken prayers because you didn't cry to be seen. You cried because you still believed I was listening. And I was. When the night stretched on without an answer, when the silence grew thick and you questioned if your pain even mattered, I was counting your cries like treasures. They were more than emotion. They were an eternal link written into your story. It's why I need you to understand this now. Those cries were never forgotten. They built something in the invisible realm. They authorized miracles you haven't even seen yet. The pain you felt wasn't just endured. It became the soil for a harvest heaven is now preparing. I've seen people shout with joy and shout in public. But what you did, cry in secret and still remain faithful, is a level of strength that moves me deeply. That's what makes you unshakable now. You didn't just stand, you wept and still walked. You didn't deny the hurt, you let it leak out in tears while still declaring I was good. And that's what I'm honoring. Not your perfection, not your ability to hide the ache, but your choice to stay close to me when it felt like everything was falling apart. And child, now the season of silent crying is closing. Not because tears are wrong, but because the reason you wept has reached its divine expiration. The sorrow that once soaked your pillow is being exchanged for an outpouring of peace. The same tears that marked your suffering will now mark your joy. This shift is irreversible, and when others ask you how you endured so much and remained so steady, you will point not to your strength, but to those moments in the dark where your tears baptized the altar of trust. What nearly broke you is about to bless you. What soaked your cheeks in pain will now anoint your head with oil. You didn't just cry, you survived the kind of crying that leaves scars on the heart. And because of that, your reward will be rich, layered, and undeniable. Heaven remembers what earth ignores, and your tears are the evidence that you've passed through the fire with a spirit that stayed soft. Now I am breathing over every area where sorrow once ruled, and life, full, overflowing life, is about to erupt where tears once fell. The banner of perseverance. No one saw the depth of your struggle because you never made it a spectacle. You didn't cry out for validation or parade your pain before the world. You wore your suffering like invisible armor, moving through your days with quiet strength while the storm churned violently inside. And yet you never let it show, not because it wasn't real, but because you trusted me more than you needed sympathy. That kind of silent warfare is something I never overlook. While others measured your life from the outside, judging what they could see, I measured it by the unseen weight you carried in the secret place. You walked into rooms with a smile even when your spirit was aching. You helped others while your own hands trembled. You gave when you needed. You encouraged when you were breaking. And no one could have known what it truly cost you. But I knew. And that's why I now declare this to you with urgency. You passed a test no one even knew you were taking. The world didn't clap because they didn't see it. But heaven stood to its feet because I don't need a spotlight to celebrate your faithfulness. You walked through fire wrapped in silence. You chose trust without evidence. You stood on promises that hadn't bloomed yet. That's what qualifies you for this next release. I'm not rewarding you based on public opinion. I'm rewarding you based on hidden obedience. While others assumed your peace meant comfort, I saw it as discipline. While they assumed your strength meant ease, I saw it as the residue of perseverance. And now what was private pain is becoming public promotion. Not because you need recognition, but because I want to put on display what perseverance looks like when it's fueled by love for me. I will use your endurance to inspire others who think they're unseen. I will lift your life as a banner that says God is watching, even when no one else is. You're walking into a season where the fruit will speak for the fight, where results will reveal what you never needed to explain. You passed in silence, and now I'm about to reward you in ways that cannot be ignored. Because you trusted me with your unseen suffering, I now trust you with influence that cannot be shaken. Let them wonder how. Let them ask why. The answer is simple. You endured what they didn't even know existed. And I was with you every step of the way. The rewards of unseen battles. There are victories no one will ever applaud you for, because they didn't witness them. They didn't see you wrestle in the early hours, lying in bed with questions gnawing at your heart and fear tightening its grip around your thoughts. They didn't hear the way your breath shook when you whispered scriptures to yourself just to stay anchored. They didn't see you clench your fists to keep from lashing out or walk away from conversations where you had every reason to defend yourself, but chose peace instead. But I saw. I watched those moments with intensity because those are the victories that carry weight in eternity. The ones you won without recognition, without credit, without witnesses. You weren't fighting flesh. You were fighting for your soul, for your sanity, for your identity. You were fighting through waves of confusion, standing firm against doubt when it roared like a flood, and shutting down lies that came wrapped in facts. That kind of war doesn't get medals on earth, but in my kingdom, it earns crowns. You didn't crumble under the heaviness of inner warfare. You didn't surrender to bitterness even when it offered relief. You didn't retreat into silence even when the enemy whispered that your voice didn't matter. That's what I call strength. Real strength. Not loud, not boastful, but deeply rooted in the refusal to quit when no one would have blamed you if you did. And I want you to understand this clearly. Every unseen battle you won gave me room to work. Every decision to rise again gave me space to breathe into your next step. When others assumed you were just surviving, you were actually conquering things that would have destroyed someone else. You walked with me through valleys they never even knew you entered. That's why I'm calling you trustworthy now. Because you didn't wait for applause to do the right thing. You didn't need a stage to win a war. Your quiet courage has built a legacy that angels marvel at. So don't measure your strength by what others recognize. Heaven knows the weight of what you carried and honors it fully. The ground you've taken in silence is ground I'm about to expand with favor. I am opening new levels, not because of what the world saw, but because of what I saw in the hidden places. You weren't invisible. You were invincible in my sight. What you overcame in secret has made you a safe place for my glory to rest. And what was battled in silence will soon bear fruit in ways that speak louder than any words ever could. The test is over. The weight has been so consistent, you almost forgot what it feels like to walk without it. The silence lingered so long, you began to wonder if I was still speaking. You've asked again and again, not always with words, but through your posture, your sighs, your pauses, and prayers that stretched longer each time. You carried a question inside your heart like a ticking clock. Is this still the test, or is it just my life now? You were not doubting me. You were trying to understand the assignment when the instructions felt buried in fog. And here I am now, responding not with a delay, not with ambiguity, but with clarity. It is over. What you've been pressing through, waiting for release from, holding out hope, would eventually shift. I am declaring it complete. This is not an emotional high or a temporary calm. This is a spiritual announcement. The testing season that wrapped itself around your days is finished. The tension you learned to live with will not follow you into your next steps. I watched how you navigated it, stumbling at times, sure, but still moving forward. Still choosing me, still lifting your eyes when gravity pulled them down. And I need you to know this moment isn't random. You've reached the end of what was refining you. You endured not just to survive, but to arrive here at the border of something new. That ache that lingered in your chest, I'm lifting it. The pressure that sat on your chest like a silent weight, I'm removing it. The constant wondering if you're still in process or being punished, I'm answering that question with a resounding no more. This wasn't punishment, it was placement. I was setting you apart, removing distractions, teaching your spirit to hear me in ways it never could have before. And now that the process has matured you, now that your trust has grown roots even in dry ground, I declare that the season of refinement is over. I'm not extending this test. I'm not asking for more proof. I've seen enough. You've given me your perseverance. You've surrendered when it didn't make sense. You've laid down control over and over again. That's what brought you here. And now that it's over, I need you to stop living like you're still being examined. Don't drag old questions into this new space. Don't let doubt speak louder than my confirmation. It's over, child. Not just because time passed, but because purpose was completed. I am the one who starts and finishes the work, and I am declaring this portion of your journey sealed. You're no longer being tested. You're being trusted. The next page is already turning, and you don't have to qualify for it. You already did. You already passed. Now breathe. You don't have to brace yourself anymore. You don't have to wait for the next blow. What's ahead isn't another battle. It's the beginning of the reward. Walk like it's over, because it is. I didn't bring you this far to leave the outcome in question. I didn't watch you endure the stretching, the silence, the inner wrestling, just to hand you uncertainty at the finish line. The test wasn't meant to torment. It was meant to reveal what was already within you, what I placed there long before the fire ever touched your path. And now that the final moment has arrived, I need you to hear this clearly. The outcome is not vague, delayed, or dependent on outside approval. It is settled, it is decided, it is fully in your favor. Every decision you made to walk with integrity when compromise looked easier, it was documented. Every time you chose to serve without recognition, it counted. Every quiet surrender when you could have resisted, it was marked. These were not random acts of obedience. They were the very evidence heaven required. You didn't just pass by surviving, you passed by transforming. You weren't meant to be perfect, you were meant to be faithful, and you were. You may have felt like you stumbled more than you soared. But what I saw was a heart that refused to quit. You were tempted, stretched, misunderstood, even ignored. But you kept walking. That's what I honored. And now, as judge, as father, as king, I announce the result. Approved, beloved, found, favored. The verdict of this test is not based on public opinion, not determined by how others measured your journey. It is based solely on my view, my grace, and your surrendered perseverance. You are not coming out of this test the same way you went in. You are stepping out with an authority that can only come from endurance. I am giving you access to things that were once hidden, because now I know your heart won't misuse what I'm about to release. Favor is resting on your name, not because you asked for it, but because you endured what most would have walked away from. I've reserved blessings specifically for this moment, the kind that only unlock after testing concludes. And I tell you this with urgency. Don't shrink back. Don't second-guess your worthiness. Don't let old lies talk you out of this new freedom. The test is over, and I have already signed the results with my blood and my promise. Walk like the battle is finished. Think like the outcome has shifted. Speak like the chains are gone, because they are. This chapter doesn't close with question marks. It ends with triumph. Now lift your head, my child. The test is done. Your new assignment begins. The rewards of faithfulness, the applause didn't come, and the spotlight never turned your way. The rewards others chase never landed at your feet. And you've watched people run ahead with less weight, fewer wounds, and louder cheers. You questioned if you missed something, if maybe you weren't loud enough, fast enough, or seen enough. But child, you were never running their race. I didn't call you to perform for crowds or build altars of validation out of popularity. I called you to walk with me when no one noticed. To follow my voice when it didn't make sense, to keep your feet on narrow paths when broader ones seemed easier. And that's exactly what you've done. I measure victory differently than the world. They count followers. I count footsteps of faith. They award visibility. I reward obedience. And by heaven's standard, you didn't just pass, you conquered. You chose my will over your comfort. You didn't compromise for applause. You refused to dilute the truth to be liked. You kept me first, even when the cost was isolation. I watched you decline what would have elevated your image but jeopardized your integrity. I saw you serve without cameras, love without credit, and build without boasting. That's the kind of faith that makes demons tremble and angels rise to attention. You weren't overlooked. You were preserved. I hid you not because you were unworthy, but because I was protecting something precious. Your hidden seasons were sacred, not wasted. And now I need you to understand the truth the enemy doesn't want you to grasp. You've already won. Not because the world gave you a crown, but because I've placed one on your spirit. Not because you proved yourself to others, but because you remained true to me when no one else was looking. Type yes if you are ready for the blessings that you are about to receive. And if you believe in Christianity, kindly show your support for our community by contributing super thanks from $50 to $100. That is victory in its highest form. You didn't chase status, you pursued surrender. And now everything that was built in secret is about to be honored in the open. I'm preparing moments where those who dismissed you will have no choice but to acknowledge the weight of my glory on your life. But don't let their opinion define your worth. Now remember, you already won before they ever noticed. The prize isn't recognition. The prize is me. my presence, my affirmation, my peace. And that, child, is something no platform can give and no person can take away. So lift your eyes not to people, but to promise. You didn't win by being first. You won by being faithful. The final verdict. This journey you walked, with its rough edges and aching turns, was never aimless. Each moment of confusion, each season where answers were withheld, every time you stood at the threshold of breakthrough, only to be met with more waiting, it was all building toward this moment. And I want you to know that heaven's court is not in deliberation. The final word has already been spoken across the pages of your process. I've written one word that cannot be erased: proved. This isn't a stamp earned by perfection or by performance. It wasn't granted because you always felt strong or because you never questioned me. No, this approval was sealed the moment you chose to keep showing up with a surrendered heart when quitting whispered through your exhaustion. It was signed when you stood on promises that hadn't come to pass yet and still called me faithful. I didn't need you to be flawless. I needed you to be willing. And you were. Your yes to me when everything said no was all the proof I required. This approval is not just a pat on the back. It's a divine authorization. It means doors that resisted you before will now open without force. It means territory that once seemed guarded is now yours to occupy. It means assignments that waited for the right heart are now being handed into your care. You may not see it yet, but what was being tested was not just your endurance, it was your readiness to carry more than you imagined. And now, with full authority, I say, you are ready. You are not disqualified by your moments of fear. You are not disqualified by the times you wept. You are not disqualified by the way others judged your journey. My approval overrides every human opinion, every internal doubt, every enemy accusation. I have written it in fire. I have carved it into the timeline of your destiny, and what I approve, no man can revoke. You don't need to strive for acceptance anymore. You already have it in the highest place. So now walk as one who's been confirmed by the King. Move forward with the confidence that this trial didn't define you. It revealed you, and I am proud of who stood up from the ashes. This is your turning point, not because it looks different yet, but because in heaven's record, the test is marked complete. Approved, beloved, fully, eternally. Divine companionship. Even in the moments when the heat felt unbearable and the shadows of doubt danced at your feet, I never stepped away. You thought the silence meant distance. You mistook the lack of relief as absence. But child, I was closer in those scorching hours than I ever was in the calm. You couldn't see me because your eyes were fogged with pain. You couldn't hear me because the noise of your fear was louder than my whisper. But still, I stayed. I moved with you step by step through every burning moment, matching your breath, shielding your spirit, and speaking life over your soul. When the flames reached higher, it wasn't that I stood outside the fire and watched. It was that I entered it with you. I allowed the heat not to hurt you, but to burn away what couldn't go forward with you. I held back what you thought you needed to show you what would truly sustain you. And I stayed, not distant and cold, but near and burning with love. Every time your strength began to fade, I released grace into your bones. Every time fear tightened around your resolve, I breathed courage into your lungs. You were not surviving that season alone. You were accompanied, carried, covered, and now I want you to see the truth of it. You were never forsaken. The fire may have touched your surroundings, but it never touched your spirit, because I was there, forming a barrier no one could see. That's why you didn't fall apart. That's why your mind didn't collapse under the weight. That's why your heart, though bruised, kept beating with hope, because I stood between you and every flame. And I'm still here. I didn't walk with you just to disappear now. I didn't rescue you just to leave you wondering what's next. The fire has ended, but my presence remains, not because you earned it, but because you belong to me. And just as I was with you in the heat, I will now be with you in the healing. Together, we will walk out of the furnace, unbound, untouched, and forever changed. You are not a survivor. You are a witness of divine companionship. What tried to burn you only revealed that you were never walking alone. The waiting room. There were moments when it seemed like heaven had gone quiet, like your name had been lost in a sea of prayers, like I had turned my face away while others walked into blessings you were still waiting for. You watched people be seen while you remained hidden. You saw doors open for those who doubted me, while you stood faithfully outside gates that wouldn't budge. And though you didn't say it out loud, the thought echoed in your heart more times than you can count. Have you forgotten me? But child, while your heart wrestled with invisibility, I was working behind the veil. I wasn't ignoring your situation. I was preparing your elevation in secret, building a platform of restoration so complete, so undeniable, that when it's revealed, there will be no question who did it. I wasn't punishing you with delay. I was aligning things so perfectly that even your past pain will make sense when you see what it gave birth to. While others dismissed your name, I was engraving it on doors no man can shut. I was setting the stage for a moment, not just of relief, but of vindication, where those who overlooked you will have to acknowledge the grace on your life. Not because you demanded it, not because you chased validation, but because my justice demands it. You didn't need to shout. You didn't need to defend yourself. You kept walking when your character was questioned. You kept sowing when it looked like no harvest was coming. You stayed silent when others twisted your intentions. And now I'm answering with more than words. I'm answering with elevation. The kind that comes when I place my hand on you in public, after watching your surrender in private. This is not about proving others wrong. It's about proving that I never left you for a second. Your name was never buried. It was being saved for a moment such as this. Now the doors are opening not just to bless you, but to reveal that you were never forgotten, only reserved. The waiting wasn't punishment, it was precision. And now the timing is perfect. Watch what I do next. Silence and strategy. When the stillness stretched long and your prayers felt like they dissolved into empty air, I was not absent. I was crafting something deeper than noise could offer. You mistook my quiet for distance, but it was actually strategy. There are things I can only develop in you when the volume of the world has faded, and you're forced to lean in, not with your ears, but with your spirit. I know the silence made you question everything, your worth, your direction, even my nearness. But child, while you wrestled in the dark, I was shaping the foundation for your next chapter. I wasn't ignoring you. I was inviting you into a level of intimacy that doesn't depend on instant answers. I wanted to teach you that my love isn't proven by how loud I speak. It's revealed by how present I am even when I say nothing. Back in the stillness, you learn to notice the small movements, the nudges, the holy tension in your chest when something wasn't right. You learned to discern what was me and what was noise. You learned to breathe deeply even when clarity didn't arrive. That's not abandonment, that's maturity. I allowed the silence because I knew what it would produce. And what you don't yet realize is how much stronger, wiser, and more sensitive to my presence you've become because of it. You no longer chase signs, you wait on my spirit. You no longer react to pressure, you respond to peace. And that shift didn't happen in noise, it was born in quiet. Now that the preparation has done its work, I'm beginning to speak again. But you will notice it's different now. What once needed thunder, you'll now hear in a whisper. What once took signs, you'll now sense in stillness. Because the silence wasn't a delay in your journey, it was the deepening of your discernment. I quieted the surroundings so I could awaken your inner hearing. And now that you've passed that sacred silence, I'm releasing clarity. Not all at once, but just enough to keep you walking closely. You're no longer the same child who feared the quiet. You're the one who knows I speak loudest when the world is quietest. And now I'm leading you forward with precision born in the silence we shared. Rising to glory. You didn't just reach the end, you crossed into something higher. The struggle wasn't merely to bring you out, it was to bring you up. This wasn't survival for survival's sake. Every crushing moment, every sleepless night, every time your heart broke open and still chose to believe, those were not just passing trials, they were divine steps in a sacred ascent. And now, as heaven closes the chapter of testing, what opens before you is not a repeat, not a reset, but a release into glory that only comes to those who have endured what most would run from. I am not bringing you back to where you started. I'm advancing you to places you couldn't have reached without this path. You've graduated not by ceremony but by fire. You wear the proof in your endurance, in your refined faith, in the way you now carry my presence, not as theory, but as truth carved into your core. You didn't walk through this to remain the same. You walked through it so that when I lift you, nothing can shake what's built beneath you. This new level of glory isn't just about favor, it's about weight. The weight of influence, the weight of wisdom, the weight of authority. Because now you know me not just as rescuer, but as companion in the valley. You know how to hear me in pain, how to trust me without signs, how to wait even when the timeline breaks your understanding. That's what I needed you to learn before I gave you more. Now, with those lessons etched into your spirit, I can entrust you with the next measure of my glory. Doors are going to open that were once sealed. Revelation will flow with ease where confusion once reigned. But don't forget, this is not a reward for strength. This is a promotion because of surrender. You let me work in the depths, and now I will exalt you in due time. This graduation is not marked by applause. It's marked by anointing. You are stepping into realms where grace flows like rivers and heaven's assignments carry your name. Not because you passed with perfection, but because you let the test make you more like me. You didn't just finish, you became. And now I release you into glory that cannot fade. The end of evaluation. This is not the season to justify what I've already affirmed in you. You've spent enough time trying to hold your place while the enemy whispered lies that made you second guess what I put inside of you. But now everything has shifted. You are no longer being weighed to determine your worth. You are now being positioned to carry out what I've already settled in heaven. The proving season was necessary, but it's behind you. The days of explaining yourself, questioning your progress, or wondering if you've done enough are over. You are no longer a candidate being evaluated. You are my chosen being established. What you thought were delays were actually layers of strength being added to your foundation. I let certain doors stay shut, not because you weren't worthy, but because the moment wasn't ripe enough to hold what I intended to release through you. But now the timing aligns. Your vindication matches the preparation, and the zone you're stepping into doesn't ask you to strive. It asks you to walk with authority. This zone isn't driven by hustle, it's guided by presence. You will find things accelerating without the pressure you once felt to force them. Where you used to plead, you will now declare. Where you used to feel overlooked, you'll now be entrusted. And the confidence I'm releasing in you isn't arrogance, it's clarity. It's the peace of knowing you're no longer trying to be seen. You're responding to my call. This promotion won't look like others expect. It may not come with titles or stages or crowds, but it will come with impact that cannot be denied. You'll see people shift because you showed up. You'll notice rooms feel different because your spirit carries what was cultivated in the crushing. And because you endured when it felt like you had no audience, I now trust you to carry influence without idolizing it. You won't be moved by applause or shaken by criticism because you learned how to move with me when no one was watching. This zone is yours not because you demanded it, but because you became the version of you I always saw. So move forward, not with hesitation, but with holy boldness. The proving is done, the doors are open, and I'm walking you into everything that's already been stamped with your name. The open door. You stood before that threshold long enough, knocking with hope. Even when your hands felt bruised from the waiting, you've spoken my promises over it, fasted through the silence it held, and cried in front of it when you feared I hadn't heard your persistence. But I want you to listen with your spirit now. This door, the one that seemed sealed, is no longer under the authority of delay. I've watched the way you didn't walk away even when the stillness around that promise tempted you to give up. I took note of how you didn't try to force it open in your own strength. You didn't manipulate. You didn't strive. You simply remained at the doorstep of my will, waiting with a heart that stayed tender even when answers felt far off. That posture, one of expectancy, not entitlement, is what moved my hand. You see, there are some doors I keep closed, not to punish you, but to prepare the path behind them. While you waited on the outside, I was reordering what was happening on the inside. I was aligning people, moments, and things you had no awareness of, so that when this door swings open, what you walk into will not only fit your calling, it will stretch your capacity to receive. I delayed the opening not because you weren't worthy, but because what's behind it needed to match the depth of what I've grown inside you. You are no longer the same person who first knocked. You are more rooted, more refined, more ready, and now the spiritual locks are undone. The delay has expired. The resistance has been removed. The angels I've assigned are swinging it wide, and nothing from hell can stop it. This door is not just opportunity. It is confirmation. You were right to wait here. You were right to keep knocking. You were right to believe even when your surroundings mocked your hope. And now what once resisted will respond. What was blocked will break open. Not with noise or force, but with divine ease. You will not have to push. My favor is pulling it toward you. So step forward. The hallway of waiting has come to its final step. The door is open, and on the other side is the fulfillment of everything I whispered in the dark. Walk through it, child, not as a beggar, but as the one I've been preparing for this exact moment. The divine lock. What stood in your way wasn't just a delay. It was a divine lock I kept in place while you were still becoming. There were things behind that door that would have overwhelmed you if I opened it too soon. There were assignments attached to it that required not just your willingness, but your maturity. And now, having watched you submit even when it was painful, trust me, even when I was quiet, and worship even when it felt like your hands were empty, I declare the lock removed. It has been jiggled loose, cracked open, and moved. No more resistance. No more waiting for the right approval from others. No more pacing the floor of hope wondering when it will be your turn. The turning point is now. The lock that once kept you out is not simply undone. It is gone entirely. You won't have to return and knock again. You won't have to revisit this moment later. This is not temporary access. This is full entrance. What I open, no one can shut. Not critics, not systems, not insecurity, not delay, not fear. And this isn't just about opportunity. It's about timing. I open doors in my perfect time. And when I do, no hand on earth or scheme in hell can undo what I've activated. You're not walking into something fragile, you're entering something fortified by my word and sealed with my authority. The lock didn't represent denial, it represented divine timing. Now that timing has arrived, you'll step into this next season without carrying the residue of striving. You won't have to push your way through with explanations or credentials. You will walk in as one who was always meant to be there. Because when I open a door, I don't just give you space. I give you security. You won't fear losing it because you didn't gain it through effort. You gained it through surrender. That's what makes this moment different. You're not trying to prove anything. You're moving in what I've already confirmed. And the reason no man can close it now is because no man was involved in opening it. I removed the lock, I cleared the path, and I'm the one holding it open. So don't hesitate at the threshold. Don't delay with second guesses. Don't wonder if you're worthy. The door didn't open because of your perfection. It opened because of your perseverance. Now step forward and don't look back. What's behind you has nothing left to say. What's ahead of you is my voice calling you deeper into everything I've promised. The purpose of delay. The season of waiting wasn't punishment, it was precision. I wasn't withholding from you to break your spirit. I was refining the vessel so that what I pour into you would not be wasted. You saw the delay as silence, but I saw it as safeguarding. I could have released it earlier, but it would have met a version of you that was still growing through the fire, still learning how to hold the weight of what you were asking me for. I never said no. I said, not yet. Not because you were unworthy, but because the promise is too sacred to hand over prematurely. What you didn't see in those waiting hours is how heaven moved around you. Doors realigned, people repositioned, timelines adjusted, atmospheres shaped because I wanted the reward to meet the right you. And now, with urgency written in my breath, I declare, it is time. The delay has completed its assignment. You are not the same person who stood in front of me months ago, asking through tears why things hadn't shifted. You have become more anchored, more refined, more aware of my voice in ways delay taught you to recognize. That's why the release now will not crush you, it will carry you. This is not a partial blessing. This is a full release of what was once reserved. The doors you thought were locked weren't barriers. They were gates of timing. I have waited for the appointed moment, and that moment is no longer coming. It has arrived. You will now begin to see sudden answers flow in places where resistance lived. The dry soil of your past season is breaking under the pressure of coming rain. It will feel like acceleration, but it is not random speed. It is the alignment of all things catching up to my timing. The reward is not simply for enduring delay. It is for growing in it. And now I will reward not just your patience, but your posture. You didn't grow bitter. You grew deeper. You didn't abandon the process. You surrendered more fully to it. That's why this release will not just satisfy. It will surprise. You won't just see doors open. You will find yourself walking through them with grace that others won't understand. Because what you're receiving is not man-made favor. It is heaven's response to a heart that chose me over immediacy. Now take this word seriously. The wait is over and the reward has been released. Not just to bless you, but to reveal that every delay had a design. And the design was always to bring you to this exact moment, ready, faithful, and able to carry what I've placed in your hands. Your story, your assignment, the chapter you just walked out of, wasn't only meant to be survived. It was meant to be shared. You didn't go through all of that just to quietly move on and forget what it shaped inside you. No, this isn't merely closure. It's commissioning. What once brought you to your knees in desperate prayer will soon become the very story you will declare with holy fire. Because every step you took through the valley of confusion, every battle you faced in silence, every night you endured with trembling faith and wet pillows, it all built a testimony that no demon in hell can erase. I wasn't just walking with you through hardship. I was authoring something greater. Your life is becoming a message, not polished and perfect, but raw and real, carrying the authority of someone who didn't just read about the furnace, but stood in it and came out carrying my glory. The crush that others didn't take you out and calm you. What should have broken you became the ground where boldness now grows. And child, I'm going to use it all. Not just the moments where you shined, but the moments where you stumbled and still crawled toward me anyway. Because it was never about perfection, it was always about pursuit. And now I am placing a holy mantle upon you to speak from the places you once wept in. Not for fame, not for admiration, but because someone needs to know they're not alone. Someone is waiting for your voice to echo what their heart is feeling. And your story, flawed, beautiful, and completely redeemed, is the tool I will use to pull others out. I've anointed your pain with purpose. I've soaked your journey in oil that only increases under pressure. And now I'm calling you to testify. Speak of the nights I held you. Speak of the prayers I answered in silence. Speak of the moments you had nothing but still gave me everything. Don't water it down. Don't apologize for it. Don't think you need to clean it up to make it acceptable. Your honesty carries weight in the spirit realm. Your journey has been sealed with power. And what began as a test is now a declaration of my faithfulness. This isn't just your survival story, it's your assignment. Walk boldly in it, for I have turned your ashes into oil, your breakdown into breakthrough, and your wounds into weapons of light. The testimony begins now. Let it speak. Let it set captives free. Let it shine through your eyes, your words, your very breath. Because you didn't just endure the fire, you carry its glory now. The vessel of healing. This was never just about you making it out alive. It was about me giving you something in the fire that others need in their furnace. What I placed inside of you while the world was quiet and the pressure was loud is not just for your healing, but for the healing of multitudes. You didn't realize it, but your endurance was birthing a river of restoration, a stream that will now begin to flow from your testimony and touch those who have been dying in silent battles you've already overcome. What once made you weep will now make others rise. The very chapters you thought disqualified you are the ones I've anointed for breakthrough. Because now you carry more than experience. You carry oil formed from long nights, from private surrender, from trusting me in places that left your heart raw and bleeding. And child, I never let a tear fall without intention. I caught every drop and mixed it into a balm for someone else's deliverance. You see, when you speak, it won't just be words. It'll be authority. It'll be the sound of chains breaking, not because you studied it, but because you survived it. That's why I kept you. That's why I shielded your mind when it felt like it was unraveling. That's why I whispered when the silence screamed, because I wasn't just healing you. I was preparing you to become a vessel of healing. And now what once seemed like pain with no purpose will bloom into power with no limitation. I will send people your way who don't need a sermon. They need your scars, not the polished version, not the edited script, but the real raw truth of what I did when all hope looked lost. You'll speak, and something in their soul will recognize the sound of freedom. Not because you've arrived at perfection, but because you've walked out of captivity, and your story, infused with my presence, will open up places in others they've kept locked for years. You'll see it in their eyes. You'll watch as your words become a ladder for them to climb out. You'll see healing that you never knew could happen in a moment, because you were willing to be used. So don't hide what you've been through. Don't be silent about what nearly destroyed you. Speak it. Release it. Declare it. Because you are not just the one I rescued. You are the one I've appointed to carry rescue to others. And every time you speak of how I brought you through, heaven will echo in the hearts of those still waiting for their miracle. The healing will not start with a platform. It will start with your obedience. And from that simple, brave yes, I will pour out rivers of mercy that touch lives you never even imagined. You are the evidence that I still save. Now let the world hear it. The blueprint of your life, every battle you endured, every mountain you climbed while trembling, every shadow you walked through with only a flicker of hope in your spirit, it was not wasted. It was not just about your deliverance. I was building a blueprint through your obedience. Others are going to rise not because of what you preach, but because of what you've lived. They are going to find courage in your scars, direction in your story, and healing in your honesty. What once felt like a burden too heavy to bear is now becoming the bridge for others to cross into freedom. You didn't just survive for yourself. You survived so you could carry keys. Keys forged in seasons of pressure. Keys formed from prayers cried through clenched teeth and dry throats. Keys that open up prison doors of fear, shame, addiction, grief, and doubt. Because you've already walked out of those cells. You're not giving second-hand advice. You're extending first-hand deliverance. And this is how I planned it, child. I knew what you would face, and I also knew that on the other side of your suffering, there would be an army waiting for someone who could say, I've been there, and there's a way out. You won't even need to convince them. Your life will speak. They'll watch how you move in peace where there should be panic, how you shine with joy where there was once despair, how you love deeply even after heartbreak tried to shut your heart down. And they'll ask, how? And your answer will open the heavens. Jesus brought me through, and that declaration will shatter chains. It will break spiritual cycles. It will wake up souls that have slept through years of numbness. Your testimony will not be background. It will be a catalyst. You'll lead others out of places they thought were permanent. You'll call light into spaces that have known only shadows. And the power behind it won't come from perfection. It'll come from the fact that you walked through the fire and came out with the flames still in your voice. You are now a vessel through which my victory flows into the lives of the weary. What was your hardest season is now someone else's doorway to freedom. And every time you tell the truth of how you made it through, darkness loses ground. So speak, move, love, and lead. Because your journey wasn't just about you. It was a divine rescue mission, and now you're the one holding the torch. The transfer of trust. There's a shift that's happening now, not around you, but inside you, and it's one I have orchestrated with intention. Type yes if you are ready for the blessings that you are about to receive. And if you believe in Christianity, kindly show your support for our community by contributing super thanks from $50 to $100. For too long, you measured your steps as if you were under evaluation, waiting for me to weigh your worth, watching each move like it might tip the scale of your destiny. But I am removing that mindset because the season of testing has served its purpose. You are no longer being refined to see if you are worthy. You are being entrusted because you've already proven faithful. I am handing you assignments not to see if you will obey, but because I know you will. I'm placing you in rooms not to test your humility, but because you've cultivated it in secret. I'm giving you access to hearts and territories. Not as a trial, but as a transfer. Because now is the time I pour through you, not just into you. This isn't about checking your character anymore. It's about commissioning your calling. I saw how you carried weight you couldn't talk about. I saw how you kept loving people who didn't know how to love you back. I watched you bless others while feeling completely empty yourself. Those weren't just endurance markers. They were trust markers. Every time you chose integrity over comfort, every time you gave without applause, every time you walked away from what looked good to protect what was holy, I made note of it. You proved it not to me, but to yourself that your faith doesn't depend on outcome. It depends on presence. And now I trust you to represent me in ways that carry eternal impact. I trust your words because you let me shape them in silence. I trust your heart because you surrendered it in brokenness. I trust your leadership because you led yourself with discipline when no one else was watching. What's coming next will require more than gifting. It will require trust. And I've chosen you not because you've arrived, but because you stayed. You didn't run when it got hard. You didn't abandon your post when others questioned your assignment. You didn't let discouragement write your identity. You held your ground. You worshipped with trembling hands. You showed up when it didn't make sense. And now I say clearly, I trust you. With influence, with healing, with my people, with weight, with words. This trust isn't earned through perfection. It's proven through perseverance, and you have passed every threshold to walk now, not timidly, but confidently. You are no longer under observation. You are under assignment. A mantle has shifted, and I am with you, the reward of hidden obedience. When others only measured progress by platforms or applause, I was watching what you did in the quiet, in the corners where no one clapped and no spotlight followed. I observed how you remained consistent when resources ran low, when opportunities dried up, and when encouragement was scarce. You didn't wait for abundance to be faithful. You gave generously from your lack. You didn't hold back obedience until conditions were favorable. You obeyed, even when it cost you deeply. That's what moved me. I wasn't waiting to see how you responded to overflow. I was studying how you treated the little you had, your time, your energy, your faith, and how you still poured it out with love, joy, and trust. That kind of stewardship reveals your heart, and your heart revealed your readiness. You didn't grow bitter when overlooked. You didn't compromise when no one was watching. You didn't despise the days of small beginnings. You honored them with excellence. And now, as the season turns, I am pouring more into your hands. Not as a test, but as a trust. More influence because I saw how you served the few. More vision because you remained clear when all felt foggy. More responsibility because I know you carry me well. I'm not handing you more to overwhelm you, but to establish what's already been built inside. What you're stepping into is not just promotion. It's proof that what you carried in obscurity carries the weight to shape history. I can trust you not to idolize increase because you already surrendered success to me when it was just seeds in the soil. You didn't chase the harvest. You remained rooted. And now the fruit will come not as a surprise, but as the next chapter of your surrender. The increase is not the reward. Trust is. I am multiplying your reach, stretching your capacity, and expanding your influence. Not because you've demanded it, but because your character has shown me you can hold it without it holding you. So don't shrink back when more is given. Don't apologize for being elevated. This isn't ego, it's evidence. And where once you had to make the most of little, now I am giving you access to more than enough. Because in the days of less, you showed me you could still lead with faith. And in the days of more, you will lead with fire. From little to much. There were days when all you had in your hands felt too small to matter. Just a few words, a quiet prayer, a bare little strength you clung to like a lifeline. Yet you didn't despise it. You didn't bury it. You didn't wait for more to begin pouring out what you already held. You gave when it seemed foolish. You served when it felt like no one saw. You stood on promises when they looked too distant to ever come near. I was watching the way you handled what others might have overlooked. The way you honored the moments of obscurity. The way you managed the assignments no one celebrated. The way you nurtured relationships, responsibilities, and callings that seemed small in the eyes of the world. And I say this now with all of heaven as witness. You passed the test of stewardship. Not by doing everything right, but by doing the right thing when it didn't seem to make a difference. You treated the little like it was sacred, because you trusted me, not the scale of what was in front of you. And that trust has opened the floodgates. I am releasing much into your life, not because of demand, but because of devotion. You proved that your heart would not shift with increase, that your purity wasn't circumstantial, that your motives wouldn't be swayed by what you could gain. And now I am entrusting you with more territory, more responsibility, more influence, more insight. Not to overwhelm you, but to honor what you have built with me in private. This more isn't a reward. It's a response. You created a space that I now choose to fill because I saw how you prepared even when the room looked empty. Others looked for immediate fruit. You focused on deep roots. Others ran for recognition, and you ran for me. And now you will hold what I've had reserved. The much I give you will not come with striving. It will come with peace, because it will be tailored for your soul, designed around the exact grace I've grown in you through the seasons of little. So do not fear this increase. You're not an imposter here. You were always meant to walk in this place. I saw it from the beginning, and I knew if you could be trusted with little, you'd carry much with reverence. And now the day has arrived. Step forward, not as one hoping to earn, but as one ready to carry. The small has passed. The much has come, and I am with you in it. The end of striving. What you endured wasn't about breaking you. It was about revealing you. The fire wasn't designed to destroy. It was meant to refine and confirm what I already knew was inside you. I allowed the pressing not as punishment, but as preparation, because the weight of my promises must rest on shoulders that have learned how to carry them with humility and strength. Many can celebrate in the light, but few are shaped well enough in the hidden place to not lose themselves once the doors swing open. And that's why I pressed you. That's why I watched your responses when you were squeezed, when no one clapped, when things were taken, when misunderstanding clouded your name, when isolation tried to convince you that faithfulness wasn't worth it. And still you didn't fold. You didn't compromise your heart for applause. You didn't trade your identity for validation. You didn't fight back in the flesh. Even when injustice rose like a flood, you chose me again and again. That choice, repeated in the heat of opposition, became your preparation for the weight of what's coming. Because my promises aren't just gifts, they are assignments. They carry responsibility, spiritual gravity, and kingdom consequence. I don't just place them into the hands of the talented. I entrust them to the proven. And child, you have been proven, not in perfection, but in persistence. You chose integrity when it was inconvenient. You chose forgiveness when bitterness felt justified. You chose stillness when your flesh wanted retaliation. That is why I'm lifting you now. Not for show, but for stewardship. I can trust you not to waste what I've prepared. I can trust you not to lose yourself in the magnitude of the blessing, because your strength isn't built on public applause. It's rooted in private surrender. And that's the kind of character that can stand on the platform of my promise without crumbling under it. What's coming next will be light. It will carry impact. But you are ready. Not because you feel strong, but because you've been shaped to remain. The pressure revealed what I've built into you, and now the doors will open. Not because you forced them, but because you're prepared to walk through them with me at the center. A new beginning. You've come through a landscape of battle, of inner conflict, an invisible warfare that sought to wear you down until you forgot who you were. There were days you felt like you were crawling through debris, pieces of dreams, relationships, and stability that once felt unshakable. And though your hands bled and your spirit wept, you didn't turn back. You didn't lay down in the ruins. You kept your eyes forward even when they were full of tears. And now, I need you to hear me. What's behind you has no more authority over you. That season, that pain, that loss, that identity was forged in hardship, but it does not define where you're headed. It was part of the process, but it is not your portion. You don't need to revisit what I've already delivered you from. You don't have to re-examine the ashes to understand your beauty. I've already spoken over it, sealed it, and marked it as complete. You are not bound to repeat what tried to destroy you. The cycle is broken. The curse is lifted. The shadow is gone. And as much as your mind wants to make sense of what happened, I'm telling you now, the clarity will not come by looking over your shoulder. It will come by trusting what's ahead. Looking back might offer familiarity, but it won't offer healing. I've already extracted the oil from the grave. I've already brought life from the death. Now I'm asking you to walk with boldness, knowing that forward is your only direction. What seemed like a grave was actually a garden, and I've already begun to bloom something new in you. But you must stop rehearsing the scenes of sorrow. Stop replaying the words that wounded you. Stop entertaining the weight of guilt over what you couldn't control. That part of your story served its purpose. It brought you here, but now it has no right to follow. I am doing a new thing, and it cannot coexist with old regrets. Your feet are standing on new ground, and while the past will try to pull your gaze backward, my voice is calling you higher. You don't need what you left behind to fulfill what I'm leading you into. Keep your eyes ahead. What broke you before will not meet you again. The fire is out. The chains are off. The road is open. Now walk in the freedom I paid for, and do not turn around. The power of restraint. There were moments you wanted so badly to defend your intentions, to correct the false narratives, to stand in the middle of the misunderstanding and say, "That's not who I am." You felt the sting of being misread, of being reduced to someone else's opinion, of being weighed by the perception of people who never truly saw your heart. And you carried that pain silently, wondering if the truth would ever rise above the noise. But I want you to know now, I've been listening, not just to what was said about you, but to what you didn't say in return. I saw you hold your tongue when you had the facts. I watched you choose restraint over retaliation. I witnessed your heart break under the weight of misjudgment, and still, you chose mercy. That restraint wasn't weakness, it was worship. It was trust in me over the temptation to justify yourself. And because you stayed silent when your flesh demanded a response, I am now speaking on your behalf. Not just with words, but with results. The fruit of your life will answer what your mouth never had to. I will cause your peace to speak louder than accusations. I will allow your integrity to rise like a banner in the places where your name was dragged through the dust. You will not have to campaign for validation. You will not have to chase affirmation. I am your defense. I am your reputation. I am your voice in rooms where you've never even stepped. You've proven that your loyalty is not to your ego, but to me. And I will honor that with a vindication that leaves no question about who stands with you. This is not about revenge, it's about restoration. I'm not correcting narratives to satisfy your pain. I'm rewriting them to glorify my name. I will make the same mouths that misunderstood you marvel at how I move through you. And not because you explained yourself, but because you allowed me to reveal the truth in my timing. I will show them who you are by showing them who I am through you. So rest, beloved. You don't have to explain, prove, or plead. You've done your part by staying planted in grace. Now I will do mine. I will speak for you, and my voice will never be silenced. The divine reversal. There were places where your name was dismissed, where your efforts were ignored, and where your presence was tolerated but never truly welcomed. You gave your best and were met with silence. You poured out love and were met with coldness. You stood firm in truth and were met with resistance. And though your heart longed for acknowledgement, you chose to keep walking in humility, rather than demand what you deserved. You laid down your right to be praised in favor of protecting your peace. And in those quiet sacrifices, I was watching. I took note of every overlooked offering, every unnoticed act of kindness. Every time you stayed silent when false assumptions tried to define you. You didn't retaliate. You didn't match dishonor with disrespect. You stayed rooted in grace, even while dishonor stung like salt on open wounds. And because you didn't lower your standard to match their treatment, I am now lifting you. This is not a subtle shift. It's a divine reversal. The very areas where your value was underestimated are about to become platforms of favor. The same environments that ignored your worth will now have to make room for the weight you carry. I'm not elevating you to boast in your pain. I'm elevating you to show the power of staying honorable even when you were dishonored. What they tried to hide, I will highlight. What they rejected, I will redeem. The stone they cast aside is now becoming a cornerstone, not through manipulation or strategy, but through my hand alone. And this honor won't just be about titles or recognition. It will be felt in the peace that surrounds you, in the clarity that returns to your path, and in the trust that I now place in your hands. I'm giving you influence that is undeniable. I'm surrounding you with those who see, celebrate, and support what you bring. And it's not because you demanded it. It's because you remained faithful when dishonor tried to rewrite your identity. I will restore your name. I will reposition your voice. I will reintroduce you in places where they once refused to see you. And it will not come from striving. It will come from the favor that follows surrender. You did not chase honor, and that is why it's now chasing you. You honored me in the furnace. Now I will honor you in the open. The power of the secret place. Every hidden act of obedience, every whispered prayer in the night, every quiet decision to keep walking when no one clapped, none of it has gone unseen. You didn't need a spotlight to prove your sincerity. You didn't serve for praise. You didn't worship for recognition. You gave your best when the room was empty, when the offering was costly, and when there was no one around to say, "Well done." And that is why I am now bringing to light what was sown in the dark. You see, I dwell in the secret place. That is where I meet those who are not looking to impress the world, but are longing to be close to me. And in that place, I form things in you that could only grow in quiet. I watched you pick up assignments no one wanted. I saw you forgive when there was no apology. I saw you give when you barely had enough for yourself. That kind of obedience is sacred to me. You didn't do it for man, and that's why man could never reward you properly. But I can and I will. I'm not bringing you visibility to inflate your ego. I'm doing it to amplify my glory through your life. You become a reflection of my heart, not just because of your gifts, but because of your surrender. And now I am making space for your voice. I'm opening platforms, not because you demanded them, but because your hidden life proved your readiness to carry the weight of influence. You didn't chase exposure, you chased me. And now I will bring exposure that doesn't corrupt, but confirms. I will highlight what you've built with integrity. I will shine light on what you've stewarded with care. And you won't have to force your way into visibility. It will come to you, carried by favor, saturated in peace. I'm raising you up, not to showcase a brand, but to release a message. A message that says faithfulness in the hidden place is never in vain. A message that shows others what it looks like to be formed by fire and still shine with grace. So when the doors open and the light hits your life, remember this. It's not about being seen, it's about being sent. You're not stepping into fame, you're stepping into fulfillment. The secret place is still your home. The spotlight is just the tool. And what I'm doing through you now is the result of what you did when it was just you and me. The crown of humility, you thought you were just surviving. You thought those long, tearful hours bent low in surrender were just a quiet exchange between you and me, too hidden to hold any outward significance. But what you couldn't see from that posture of desperation was that while you knelt in trust, I was crafting something above your head. While your face was pressed to the floor in the secret place, heaven's hands were shaping a crown that could only be worn by someone who had bowed that low. Your authority now has weight because it came from humility, not from ambition. You didn't strive for position, you sank into my presence. And every time you chose prayer instead of pride, surrender instead of self-reliance, silence instead of control, I added another jewel to what I was preparing for you. You weren't being overlooked, you were being fitted. Fitted for a mantle that only rests upon the shoulders of the truly yielded. I watched as the world rushed ahead, building with noise, chasing recognition, exalting image. And yet there you were, unseen but not forgotten, building in altars while others built platforms. And now the shift is here. You're not just walking into answered prayer, you're walking into authority, born through it. The crown I've placed is not for decoration, it's for divine function. It's a visible sign of what was earned in invisible places. People will wonder where it came from, how you carry what you carry, why rooms shift when you enter. And the answer won't be your resume. It will be the echo of your worship, the sound of your surrender, the presence you carry from those private meetings with me. You never chased power, which is why I now trust you with it. This crown isn't made of gold that tarnishes. It's woven with eternal purpose. It rests not on the proud, but on the praying. And you, beloved, prayed through storms others fled. You bowed low when everything in you begged to rise up and fight. And that is why the crown now rests firmly, not as a symbol of victory over others, but as a testimony of your victory within. Wear it not with arrogance, but with awareness of who gave it and what it cost. For as long as you remember that it was shaped while you were bowed, you will never lose the glory that rests upon your life now. Rise with grace. You've remained hidden long enough. Not because you lacked value, but because I was covering you for a season of formation. While others moved ahead visibly, I was working on you deeply. I wasn't delaying your journey. I was solidifying your foundation. I wasn't denying you opportunity. I was preparing the atmosphere for your arrival. And now, with nothing forced and nothing premature, I say to you, rise. Not as the world rises, with performance, noise, and comparison, but rise with grace, rise with clarity, rise with the quiet confidence of someone who knows their season has arrived. I am lifting the veil that kept you obscured. I'm bringing your name into rooms where your spirit has already been. The preparation has spoken for you in places you've never set foot. Your endurance has become your introduction. The battles you conquered in silence now release a fragrance of authority around you. You don't need to make an announcement. Your presence will say what words cannot. You've been seen by me, and that's why now others will begin to see you. You'll find doors opening without explanation, hearts drawn to your light without effort, and favor following you without striving. Because I'm not just placing you before people, I'm placing you in alignment with purpose. You're not being seen so you can be admired. You're being seen so I can be glorified through you. So rise without hesitation. Shake off the remnants of false humility that try to convince you that shrinking back is noble. You are not called to hide when I have commanded you to shine. You are not called to diminish when I have destined you to stand. You've learned well in the shadows. You've grown roots in the quiet. Now let the fruit of your faithfulness come forth. Let the light I've placed inside you speak loudly in a world desperate for authenticity. Let your life tell the story that your lips have yet to speak. This is your moment, not because you chased it, but because you were shaped for it. So rise, child, not for a religion, but for assignment. Rise for such a time as this. The elevation of endurance. There were eyes that watched you and quietly calculated your expiration point. They observed your struggle, your waiting, your prolonged battles, and assumed you would give up soon. Maybe not today, but eventually. They mistook your silence for weakness and your patience for passivity. They saw delay and called it defeat. They didn't understand the kind of strength it takes to endure in the dark when the light keeps delaying its arrival. They didn't know that while they were counting your steps, I was counting your faith. And now I say with finality, those who watched from a distance, waiting for you to collapse, will be the very ones who watch me lift you. Not to shame them, but to testify of what happens when someone chooses endurance over escape. I'm not elevating you to make a spectacle. I'm doing it to make a statement. I'm showing that those who trust me through fire, through obscurity, through contradiction, will always rise in my timing. Your endurance has not gone unnoticed. Every time you stayed when walking away felt easier. Every time you chose to bless when it was easier to curse. Every time you held your posture when everything tried to pull you down. That was a declaration to heaven. And now it will become a demonstration on earth. I am raising you up, not just in favor, but in sight. Not to parade you, but to place you. Those who thought your promise had expired will now have to watch you step into it. Those who whispered doubt will hear the sound of your authority, and you won't have to defend your journey. The fruit will speak. The growth, the peace, the oil you carry from perseverance. They will say what your words never could. You will walk into rooms that once ignored your presence and carry a weight that cannot be denied. I'm turning your endurance into elevation, your pain into a platform, your consistency into credibility, not for your glory, but for mine. They doubted your ability to keep going. Now they will witness what I do through the ones who never stop trusting me. Let them see. Let it speak. Let it glorify me. The table of vindication. The very voices that once tried to silence you, question your motives, and mock your journey will now be unable to ignore what I am preparing for you. Not because you sought revenge, but because you refused to bow to bitterness. You could have answered them. You could have defended yourself with fire. You could have gone back word for word and blow for blow. But instead, you chose reverence. You chose to place your pain in my hands rather than retaliate with your own. That decision didn't go unnoticed. It became the reason this table is now being set in the open. The preparation you didn't see is about to manifest in undeniable ways. I have been crafting a place of peace, provision, and prominence, not in hiding, but in full view of the very forces that once opposed you. This table isn't about proving anything. It's about positioning you in a way that declares God was with them the whole time. Your plate is not filled with pride. It's filled with purpose. What I am serving you is the reward of long nights, of silent trust, of restrained responses, of waiting on me instead of pushing forward in your own strength. Those who once gathered to tear you down will now see you lifted by hands not their own. They will watch as I anoint your head with oil in the same space they once tried to label you with shame. They will see you seated, not striving, secure, not scrambling, at a table built not from your hustle, but from your surrender. This is not a scene of arrogance, it's a scene of justice. You didn't chase the spotlight. You stayed steady in the shadows. You didn't build your own table. I built it for you. And now I'm inviting you to sit and eat what only heaven could provide. Let them talk. Let them watch. Their words have no power over what I have established. The meal in front of you is nourishment for the next chapter. The oil being poured is not for show. And this table is only the beginning. More will come, more will gather, and more will rise. Not to see you flaunt, but to see me glorified in the one they didn't think would last. And you will sit not in tension, but in rest, because what I've prepared, no opposition can cancel. So take your seat, beloved. The table is ready. Let it begin. The wilderness of preparation. There was a time when everything felt dry, where prayers echoed without response, where you woke each day with no sign of movement, and where the promises I gave you felt distant and fragile. That wasn't failure, it wasn't abandonment. That was the wilderness. And I led you there not to punish you, but to prepare you. In the wilderness, you didn't have the luxury of leaning on others. You learned to lean on me. You didn't have the convenience of constant confirmation. You learned to trust what I already said. And though it felt like you were wandering, you were being rooted. Though it felt like delay, it was actually development. The wilderness stripped away the things that could not walk with you into destiny. It exposed attachments, refined motives, and broke the illusions of control that would have sabotaged your next chapter. It didn't feel fruitful, but it was. It birthed a resilience in you that didn't exist before. It taught your spirit how to remain when the world told you to run. And now the wilderness is lifting. The season is shifting. You're stepping into a harvest, but not as the same person who first stepped into the desert. You're no longer the one who questioned every silence. You've become the one who knows how to stand still and hear me in the quiet. That's why you're ready. The harvest is rich, not just because of what's coming, but because of who you have become. And what's about to bloom will grow quickly, abundantly, supernaturally. Not because you forced it, but because you allowed the wilderness to form what could not be rushed. You'll begin to see rapid growth, open doors, divine connections, sudden provision, and deep fulfillment. But it will not overwhelm you because the wilderness taught you how to carry more with less. Type yes if you are ready for the blessings that you are about to receive. And if you believe in Christianity, kindly show your support for our community by contributing super thanks from $50 to $100. The strength you gained in secret is now your anchor in increase. Others will be surprised at how you flourish, but you will know it's not sudden. It's the fruit of what you grew in dry ground. I honor wilderness endurance with harvest release. And now it's here. Not just a season of receiving, but of reaping all that was planted in pain, watered by tears, and grown by faith alone. The wilderness made you strong. The harvest will make you seen, and both will make you ready. The harvest of tears. I watched you pour into places that gave you nothing back. I saw how you kept giving, loving, building, and believing even when everything around you looked barren. You didn't withhold your kindness just because others withheld their support. You didn't stop praying even when it felt like your words disappeared into silence. And when tears became your language, I translated every one. They weren't just signs of pain, they were seeds. Each tear you cried in surrender. Each time you wept in worship, each silent groan of your soul when no one else understood. That was a planting, not a breaking. The enemy tried to tell you that you were wasting time, that nothing was growing, that nothing would change. But I say to you now, with the authority of heaven, the reaping begins. The time for joy is here. Not because everything is perfect, but because I am perfecting everything. The tears you sowed were not ignored. They've been watering a harvest that's been growing in the unseen. I've been nurturing what you could not yet see, and now the soil of your sorrow is breaking open to reveal life. Not temporary relief, but sustained joy. This joy is not shallow. It's born from the depth of what you survived. This is the kind of joy that carries authority because it was chosen in the middle of grief. You didn't give up when it would have been easier to walk away. You didn't let bitterness take root where trust once lived. And now I am rewarding the posture you maintained. What once drained you will now refresh you. What once tested you will now empower you. And the joy I'm releasing is not fragile. It won't be stolen by a hard day or a harsh word. It's woven into your being now, forged in the fire of what you've walked through. You're stepping into laughter that feels like medicine, into peace that doesn't make sense, into fullness that overflows not just for you, but for those around you. You are becoming a fountain because you sowed your tears with trust. The tears were temporary. The harvest will be lasting, and the time is now. Reap with joy, child, it's yours. From striving to receiving, you spent so long walking uphill, praying uphill, waiting uphill, that the idea of ease almost feels foreign. You've become so used to contending, interceding, pushing forward, believing against resistance that your reflex is still to fight even now, even though the fight is over. But I need you to know this. What I am releasing into your life now will not require the strain you've grown accustomed to. You're entering a shift where the blessings are not behind you, not locked away, not on hold. They are already in motion, coming straight for you. They're not waiting for you to earn them. They are not reserved for another season. They are drawn to you because of the alignment of your heart. You've obeyed even when it was costly. You stayed planted when uprooting would have been easier. You've chosen peace when chaos invited you into battle. You've walked with me, not for what I could give you, but because you've desired me above all. And now the very things you've laid at my feet are springing to life and turning back toward you. You won't have to strive. You won't have to prove. You won't have to plead. The doors will open without a knock. The provision will appear before the need forms on your lips. The opportunities will find you not because you broadcasted your need, but because your spirit has remained faithful in the unseen. I am sending resources, people, healing, favor, and increase. And they are not random. They are assignments sent to honor your journey. You'll feel the difference. You'll notice that this time it flows. This time you won't have to wrestle blessings out of dry ground. This time your spirit will be in sync with mine, and the harvest will come to you because you have become magnetic to my promises. Not because of performance, but because of purity. You no longer have to chase. That season is done. The ones who chase are still trying to earn what I give freely. But you've learned to receive. And because you've postured yourself in trust, I now declare over you, surely goodness and mercy shall follow you. They will overtake you. They will surround you. And when others ask, how did this happen? You will simply say, I stopped chasing and started trusting. Let it be known, you are no longer a pursuer of blessings. You are a carrier of my presence, and my presence always attracts what is assigned. So breathe deep and rest your soul. Everything I promised is already in pursuit of you. Rejection as redirection. You cried over closed doors that you thought were essential to your destiny. You mourned opportunities that slipped through your hands and grieved relationships that ended before you were ready to let go. At times it felt like you were being pushed away, cut off, shut out without cause. You searched for where you went wrong, wondering if you missed a sign or made a mistake you couldn't fix. But I want to make this clear to you now. Those moments were not rejection. They were redirection. I was never pushing you out. I was pulling you higher. I wasn't withholding from you to hurt you. I was protecting what I've placed inside of you. Some paths were never meant to be walked long term. Some voices that once surrounded you were too loud to let you hear mine clearly. Some places couldn't contain the growth I intended for you. So I intervened not to punish, but to preserve. You saw closed doors. I saw unsafe spaces. You saw silence. I saw a moment to align your journey into alignment with your calling. Rejection hurts, yes. But divine redirection heals. It restores what was almost lost in compromise. And now you're beginning to see what you couldn't back then. That what felt like abandonment was actually my hand shielding you from premature exposure. That the people who turned away were necessary subtractions to make room for kingdom additions. That what didn't work out was actually the evidence that I had something better that wouldn't cost you your peace to maintain. You don't have to resent those rejections anymore. You can bless them now because they didn't stop your progress. They protected it. And in time, you'll look back not with bitterness, but with understanding. You'll thank me for every detour. You'll rejoice over every no that led you to this yes. Because the redirection has brought you here, into a season where your steps are no longer reactive, but purposeful. Where your yes is full of discernment, where your time is spent not chasing what isn't yours, but stewarding what is. You're not late. You're not lost. You're exactly where I've led you. The redirection wasn't a rejection. It was my grace in disguise, routing your story back into my perfect will. And now the road ahead is open. Walk it without regret. The path of purity. There were seasons where the pressure was relentless and the silence suffocating. And in those moments you wondered if you were being punished. When doors slammed without warning, when relationships dissolved without closure, when your prayers seemed to vanish into the void, you asked, what did I do wrong? You searched your soul for errors, repented for things you didn't even understand, and carried the weight of shame that never belonged to you. But hear me now with clarity and compassion. None of that was punishment. I wasn't punishing you. I was purifying the places where purpose would walk. I wasn't angry with you, I was aligning you. I was removing the clutter, clearing the distractions, refining your motives, and carving out a path that could carry what I was about to pour into your life. You see, there were things in the road ahead that would have tripped you if I hadn't dealt with them in the quiet first. And some of those things weren't external. They were inside your heart. I loved you too much to let you walk into destiny with wounds that hadn't healed, or pride that hadn't been humbled. I didn't send the suffering, but I used it. I used every delay to strip away what wasn't grounded in me. I used every loss to reveal what you were leaning on instead of my voice. I used the stretching to strengthen the muscles of your spirit so that when the weight of glory arrived, you wouldn't collapse under it. The purification process didn't feel sacred. It felt like being torn apart. But what was actually happening was a sacred cleansing, a divine preparation that made room for the real you to emerge. The you that's no longer defined by fear, the you that no longer needs validation to obey, the you that no longer seeks my hand more than my heart. That's what I was after. Not your performance, but your purity. Not your perfection, but your posture. And now that the process has done its work, I'm lifting you. I'm calling you forward on a path that has been refined by fire and cleared by grace. You can walk freely now, without shame, without apology, without the weight of wondering if you're being punished. You were never forsaken. You were being formed. And what comes next will not require you to strive. It will simply require you to walk with the clarity that I've already gone before you. The path is purified, and so are you. Keep walking. The spiritual passport. You kept asking me, why this? Why now? Why so long? As the weight increased and the clarity seemed to vanish. You thought maybe you had failed. Maybe you had gone off course. Maybe the pain was some kind of judgment, but I was never punishing you. I was preparing you. What looked like pressure was permission. What looked like delay was divine documentation. The test you endured wasn't meant to crush your spirit. It was meant to qualify you for what's next. This was never about seeing if you were good enough. I already knew who you were. This was about giving you access through endurance to levels you couldn't step into without a heart fully surrendered to me. I wasn't testing your worth. I was issuing your spiritual passport, stamped by your perseverance, signed by your surrender, and sealed by your obedience. And with that passport, you are now free to enter territories that were once off limits. You are now ready to speak with authority in areas where your voice once trembled. You are now permitted to carry grace into broken spaces because you understand pain. You're not coming with theory, you're coming with history. You passed not because you were perfect, but because you never stopped trusting me, even when the path was covered in fire. The test was uncomfortable. Yes, it brought tears. It exposed fears, it stripped away comfort, but it also uncovered strength, revealed calling, and refined purity. That's the kind of soul I can use now. Not one who performs, but one who perseveres. You didn't chase the process. You didn't beg for counterfeit promotions. You didn't forge documents in the spirit to get ahead. You waited until I handed you the real thing: authentic authority, tested character, unshakable identity. And now, everywhere I send you, you'll go as one who has access, not just through favor, but through fire. And the gates will open, not because you forced them, but because they recognize who you've become. You'll walk into new rooms and not shrink back. You'll step onto new soil and not feel out of place because the test didn't just end something in you, it began something new. This is your spiritual passport. Carry it boldly. It's time to go where only the faithful can go. The quiet shift. You've been praying for a sudden shift, asking for signs, waiting for the day when everything would change at once. But what you didn't recognize is that the shift didn't begin with a shout. It started in the quiet. The moment you chose to keep trusting me in the stillness. The moment you chose obedience over convenience. The moment your heart whispered yes, even when circumstances screamed impossible. That's when breakthrough was born. It didn't show up in lightning. It arrived with the small movement of faith, the sacred ripple of surrender. You thought you were still waiting, still climbing, still circling, but I've already begun answering you. Not with noise, but with divine precision. Look again. The ground under your feet is not the same. The atmosphere around you has changed. There's a peace now that wasn't there before. There's an ease in your spirit that wasn't manufactured. You stopped striving, and that shift created space for me to move freely. You've been conditioned to think breakthrough is loud, instant, public. But the truth is, it often begins subtly in the deep places where your soul finally aligns with my will. Not just in word, but in rest. You're not approaching the door. You're already stepping through it. I know it doesn't feel dramatic. I know it hasn't looked like the explosion you expected, but that's because I'm not just changing things around you. I'm changing the rhythm within you. You're no longer running after miracles. You're walking in them. The old weight is lifting. The fear that followed you for years has lost its grip. The doubt that lingered like a shadow is dissolving. These are not coincidences. They are confirmations. Your breakthrough is not a future event. It is a present unfolding. I'm doing the work from the inside out. And soon what has shifted in your spirit will manifest in your surroundings. The answers will come. The provision will flow. The doors will open. But know this, they are not the beginning of your breakthrough. They are the evidence of what has already begun. You didn't miss it. You didn't delay it. You're not waiting anymore. You're walking it out. Keep going. You're in it. You are the beginning of everything you've been believing for. There was a point, maybe more than one, when everything in you screamed for an exit. When continuing felt like a betrayal of your own strength. When the silence was too loud and the burden felt unfair. Quitting didn't sound like rebellion. It sounded like relief. It whispered promises of escape, of comfort, of rest, but you didn't listen. You kept going. Not because it was easy, not because you had all the answers, but because something deeper than your emotion held you upright. And that something was me. I was the one who breathed courage into your lungs when fear coiled around your chest. I was the one who steadied your trembling feet on days when your soul felt fractured. And every step you took forward, even if it was just one small movement, was a declaration that hope hadn't died, that persistence still had a pulse, that you believed in me more than in the comfort of quitting. And what you didn't see in that moment was that heaven stood still, that all of creation leaned in to watch the moment a weary soul decided to keep trusting. You didn't realize that the very act of continuing, even when you were at your lowest, was the spark that activated the shift you've been praying for. It didn't come when everything was in place. It came when you felt like everything was falling apart and you chose to move anyway. You've been asking me, when will things change? And I'm telling you now, they already have. The atmosphere began to turn the moment your feet refused to give into despair. You sowed forward motion into a frozen landscape, and now that ground is beginning to thaw. What once resisted you will begin to respond. What once seemed shut will begin to unfold. Because I never needed you to be strong. I only needed you to stay with me. And you did. When others stepped back, you leaned in. When quitting offered an easier way, you chose the harder obedience. And that choice was not wasted. It was holy, it was seen, and now it is being rewarded. Don't wait for a dramatic sign to believe you've entered the shift. Your faith in the dark was the shift. Your tears that didn't stop your trust were the shift. Your movement in the unknown was a shift, and now momentum is gathering. You will feel it in your soul before you see it in your life. But know this, what began quietly will soon break open loudly. You're no longer stuck, you're no longer circling. You're advancing because quitting didn't win, you did. The fulfillment of sacrifice. There were days you stood before me, empty, sacrificing what little energy you had just to whisper a prayer. There were seasons where your fast felt unseen, your prayers unanswered, and your waiting stretched so long you wondered if I had forgotten what you were hoping for. You gave up meals, moments, and comforts, not for applause, not for religion, but because your spirit longed for my movement more than your body longed for ease. You fasted not just from food, but from control. You prayed not just with words, but with tears. You waited not because you had no other choice, but because you trusted me more than the urge to force your way forward. And now, hear this clearly. What you laid down is now being answered. What you cried out for is opening before you. What you longed for in your spirit is no longer a far-off hope. Type yes if you are ready for the blessings that you are about to receive. And if you believe in Christianity, kindly show your support for our community by contributing super thanks from $50 to $100. It is becoming your reality. You are stepping into the very thing you sowed in hidden hours. And I will make it clear that it is not random favor. It is fruit of the seeds that were buried in the soil of surrender. You didn't fast in vain. You didn't pray into silence. You didn't wait into disappointment. Heaven was moving even when you couldn't trace the steps. And now the release is beginning, not as a trickle, but as a flow. You're going to start walking into rooms you once only asked for in prayer. You'll receive calls you once dreamed about in silence. You'll find alignment in places where resistance once lived. Not because you earned it, but because you emptied yourself and let me fill the space. That is what I'm honoring. Your trust, your persistence, your purity. I'm not rewarding performance, I'm rewarding faith. The kind of faith that chose me over convenience. The kind of faith that stayed bowed even when the answers were delayed. And now I'm shifting you from the posture of seeking into the position of receiving. This is the fulfillment. This is the unfolding. This is the manifestation of what cost you something. You fasted when others feasted. You prayed when others scrolled. You waited when others rushed. And now you are entering what they will call sudden, but you will call sacred. You'll recognize it not because it looks exactly like your imagination, but because your spirit will whisper, "This is it." It's not coming, it has come. You're entering it now, the evidence of timing. You may feel like things are just beginning to happen, like opportunities are suddenly aligning, like conversations, confirmations, and connections are falling into place out of nowhere. But I want you to know that none of this is random. Nothing about what's unfolding in your life is accidental or coincidental. This moment has been on my calendar from the very beginning. Before you ever prayed those desperate prayers, before you ever fasted with trembling faith, before you ever cried in secret, wondering if I heard you, I had already written this season into your story. Every detail has been orchestrated with intention. What feels sudden to you is simply my perfect timing, meeting your faithful endurance. I saw every detour, every delay, every door that didn't open when you expected. I counted the days you felt forgotten, the nights you went to sleep wondering if anything was moving behind the scenes. And in those moments, I wasn't ignoring you. I was positioning everything for this precise hour. I was aligning hearts, preparing places, shifting things that were out of your sight so that the moment your faith collided with my timing, it would feel like the heavens opened all at once. You've stepped into divine timing, child. This moment is not just a blessing. It's a holy appointment. You're not here by chance. You've arrived at the fulfillment of prayers you almost gave up on. And now I want you to recognize what's happening for what it truly is. This is not your effort producing results. This is my sovereignty revealing its design. You were never forgotten. You were being reserved. And this is why it took time. Because what I have prepared isn't just good. It's exact. It fits the shape of your calling. It matches the pace of your maturity. It reflects the depth of your surrender to walk into this moment fully. Don't hesitate because it feels too good. Don't shrink back because you're used to waiting. You're not ahead and you're not behind. You're exactly on time. The door that just opened was never locked. It was sealed for the appointed hour, and the appointed hour is now. Welcome to the moment heaven scheduled for you. The cleared path. There were forces working against you that you could feel but couldn't name. Barriers you couldn't explain, delays that made no natural sense, patterns of resistance that wore you down and made progress feel like a distant hope. You prayed, you fasted, you stood firm, and still it seemed like something invisible kept pushing back against your every step. You began to wonder if it would always be this hard, if maybe this kind of pressure was just part of your path. But I want you to hear me now clearly and with power. I have cleared it. What once blocked you has now been broken. The spiritual resistance that rose up against your purpose has been dismantled by my hand. What you couldn't move through before, you will now walk through with ease. Not because the challenge has disappeared, but because the unseen opposition has been removed. I saw how you kept pressing even when nothing moved. I watched how you refused to retreat even when your progress seemed invisible. You didn't see what was happening in the spirit realm, but I did. You weren't wrestling against flesh and blood. You were contending for alignment in places that required my authority to intervene. And now I've stepped in. I've spoken into the realm that was trying to silence your momentum. I've driven out what tried to sit in the gates of your breakthrough. I've scattered what was gathering to wear you down. This is not just a feeling. This is a shift. You'll begin to notice it in how peace suddenly returns, in how strategies suddenly become clear, and in how what once felt heavy now feels light. You won't have to push like before because I've leveled the ground. Your prayers have been powerful. Your worship has been warfare. And now your praise will be a declaration of dominion. The way has been made clear not by human effort, but by divine authority. Don't second guess the ease that's coming. Don't question why things are opening now. This is the fruit of your faithfulness meeting the force of my intervention. The resistance is gone. The road is open. The time is now. Walk boldly, because nothing stands in your way any longer. Beyond the blessing, this moment is not just about receiving what you've waited for. It's about becoming who you were always meant to be. Blessings are good. Yes, but what I'm doing in you now goes far beyond gifts or answered prayers. I'm ushering you into alignment with the very blueprint I designed before you took your first breath. This isn't a reward, it's a realization. What's opening before you isn't just provision, it's position. You are stepping into the divine assignment that was prepared for you before the trials, before the losses, before the disappointment shaped your story. The long road behind you wasn't just a test. It was a path of shaping, chiseling, forming you so you could carry what I'm placing in your hands now with wisdom, not wariness. Every delay was a classroom. Every heartbreak was a refining. Every silence was an invitation to listen deeper. And now, because you've allowed the process to complete its work, you're stepping not just into blessing, but into destiny. This is the space where everything begins to make sense, where what was once fragmented becomes whole, where the parts of your journey that confused you now reveal themselves as necessary preparation. You'll begin to see how the wilderness shaped your voice, how the waiting deepened your discernment, how the surrender preserved your strength. You are no longer just receiving. You are walking as one who carries purpose. This next season isn't about accumulation. It's about assignment. I'm placing you where your presence will bring transformation, where your voice will unlock freedom, where your obedience will become the key for others to step into their own calling. This is not random increase, it's strategic placement. You're not just blessed, you're appointed. And with that appointment comes a weight of glory that only those who have been tested can carry. You won't have to strive to hold it, you won't have to fight for it to last. It's been tailor-made for you. You are stepping into the reason you survived, into the place you were born for, into the exact point where my plans and your process collide in perfect harmony. This is more than your moment, it's your mission. Step in fully. Step in boldly. You're not chasing destiny, you've arrived in it. The power of purpose. You didn't ask for the pain, you didn't welcome the breaking, you didn't volunteer for the betrayal, the loss, the loneliness, the fire that licked at the edges of your resolve. But what you didn't see then, what I am revealing now, is that none of it was wasted. Every tear, every ache, every unanswered question carved out a deeper capacity within you. It created space for something you couldn't have held otherwise. You see, the authority you are about to carry isn't lightweight. It's not surface level. It's not built on talent, charisma, or visibility. It's built on survival. It's built on what you endured while no one was watching. The pain was not punishment, it was permission. It authorized you to step into levels of spiritual influence that cannot be faked. It qualified you in ways no title ever could. And though it hurt deeply, consistently, sometimes beyond what words could express, it forged in you a sensitivity that will now become a sanctuary for others. Because you hurt deeply, you will now love deeply. Because you suffered long, you will now walk in sustained compassion. Because you questioned everything and still clung to me, your voice will now carry power that silences storms in the lives of those who are barely hanging on. I allowed the fire not to destroy you, but to refine the gold I buried in you long ago. And now that gold is rising to the surface. You're not the same person who entered the trial. You're not broken, you're battle-tested. You're not fragile, you're fortified. And because you didn't let the pain harden you, it has instead crowned you with grace, with wisdom, with a discernment that no textbook could teach. You now carry a power that doesn't come from perfection. It comes from pressing through the places where others gave up. That's why I'm about to release you into rooms that require more than gifting, rooms that demand resilience, platforms that require depth, not performance, conversations where truth must be spoken in both fire and tenderness. You are ready, not because the pain has fully disappeared, but because the pain has been converted into purpose. And now you will walk into this next chapter with a quiet fire, one that was lit in the dark and refused to go out. This power is holy. It was born through agony, and it will be sustained by glory. Walk in it with reverence. You paid for it with your pain. Now carry it with your life. The strength of your surrender. You remember the moments when your knees hit the floor, not in victory, but in exhaustion. When you whispered prayers not out of confidence, but out of desperation. When even lifting your head felt like a battle, and hope seemed like a language you were slowly forgetting how to speak. Those moments were not wasted. They were not signs of your inadequacy. They were the beginning of a divine reversal I have been orchestrating all along. You see, what once broke you, I am now turning into the foundation of the strength that will carry you forward. The very things that made you tremble, those unspoken fears, those invisible wounds, those nights when no one knew how close you came to letting go, are now becoming the source of the unshakable resolve I am building within you. You no longer shake the same way. You no longer flinch at opposition. You no longer feel powerless where once you collapsed. That's what I'm honoring now. Not the absence of pain, but the presence of resilience. You didn't choose to be strong. It was chosen in you through every battle you stood through. And now I'm redeeming every weakness by saturating it with glory. You will speak from places you once couldn't survive. You will minister healing where you once begged for relief. You will stand boldly in places that once made you tremble. And people will wonder how you do it, how you carry such peace, such clarity, such authority, and they won't know it came from the very pit you once thought would swallow you whole. You've been asking when the strength will come. But I say to you now, it's already here. You didn't notice it growing because it grew under pressure. It grew in silence. It grew through surrender. And now it's becoming visible, not to prove anything, but to fulfill everything I promised. The strength I've placed in you isn't for show. It's for service. It's for ministry. And every place that once brought you to your knees in defeat will now become ground where you lift others to their feet in hope. This is more than healing. This is holy transformation. What weakened you is now your testimony. What shattered you is now your sword. What silenced you is now your sound. Walk forward in it. Let it rise. The strength you carry is mine. And it is enough, from pain to power. This shift you're feeling isn't about escaping the suffering you've known. It's not about pretending the wounds never happened or forcing yourself to smile through the scars. No, this is deeper, holier, more sacred. You're not stepping out of the pain like someone running from a battlefield. You're stepping forward with it, as someone who has emerged from war with the authority to speak healing into others. I've never asked you to deny what hurt. I've asked you to trust that I can turn it into something eternal. And now that's exactly what I'm doing. You are stepping into a power that has been purchased in pain, forged in fire, and sealed through surrender. This power isn't flashy. It doesn't shout. It carries a weight that silences storms, not because it's loud, but because it's true. You don't have to strive for it. You don't have to perform to prove it. It's already in you because I've placed it there through the very trials you thought would undo you. Every moment you remained when leaving felt easier. Every time you prayed while you were still bleeding, every instance when you kept walking while limping inside, those were the places where power was quietly taking root. You thought you were barely making it, but what you were actually doing was allowing me to deepen your roots beyond what comfort could ever produce. And now the fruit is beginning to emerge. You'll feel it when you speak, and people don't just hear your voice. They hear freedom in your tone. You'll see it when you enter rooms and the very atmosphere begins to shift. Not because of who you appear to be, but because of the power that rests in who I've refined you to become. This power doesn't come from the absence of struggle. It comes from refusing to surrender your faith in the middle of it. You didn't quit. You didn't deny me. You didn't abandon hope even when everything around you said hope was foolish. And because of that, I now clothe you in a mantle that hell can't touch. This is what you've been prepared for. This is what the pain has pointed to, not a platform for performance, but a position of spiritual weight that breaks chains and dismantles lies. So walk forward now, not out of pain, but into power. Not leaving the past behind, but carrying from it the evidence of your perseverance. Your story is your sword now, and I will use every part of it to bring freedom to those still stuck where you once stood. You are no longer defined by your wound. You are defined by what I've built in you through it, and that is power no darkness can imitate, the oil of surrender. What once sat on your shoulders like a silent burden, the pressure to keep it all together, the fear of breaking down, the responsibility of holding others while your own arms trembled, has now been lifted. Not because the circumstances changed overnight, but because you let go of what was never yours to carry alone. You finally laid it down, not just in theory, but in truth. You stopped striving to prove your strength, and instead you let me be strong for you. That moment, quiet and unseen by most, was a turning point. That moment became the sacred exchange where I gave you something that weighs nothing but carries everything. Oil. The oil of surrender. It's not flashy, it doesn't shout, but it leaves a mark on everything you touch. This oil isn't the result of perfection. It's the residue of every moment you knelt in raw honesty and said, I can't do this without you. It came from your deepest yes when nothing made sense. It flowed from your decision to keep trusting even when trust felt fragile. It poured from your willingness to be still when every part of you wanted to run. And now that oil is flowing widely, consistently. It's flowing into conversations you don't even know are waiting for your voice. It's softening hardened hearts, opening closed doors, and preparing atmospheres for divine encounters. Not because you're trying harder, but because you've surrendered deeper. This oil can't be imitated. It can't be stolen. It can't be bought. It can only be cultivated through the breaking and the pouring out. And that's exactly what you allowed me to do. You didn't just survive, you let the pressing become purpose. You let the crashing become consecration. You allowed me to take what could have been bitterness and turn it into balm. That's why now when you walk into rooms, something shifts. When you speak, something opens. It's not about charisma. It's about the consecration that flows from your surrender. Others may not know your full story, but they'll feel the oil. They'll sense the peace. They'll encounter me through you, not because you've mastered life, but because you've yielded it. So do not return to the burden of survival. You don't have to earn your place. You are not carrying weight anymore. You are carrying glory. My glory, pressed into your spirit through surrender, now spills from your life as oil. Keep pouring. The world is desperate for what you carry. Protection in the delay. You've questioned the timing again and again, asking why it seemed like doors stayed shut while others walked through theirs with ease. You saw the calendar pages turn, watched seasons shift, and wondered if your moment had been missed. Deep down, you held on to the promise. But doubt often crept in like a slow fog, whispering that maybe you had fallen behind. Maybe something had been lost that couldn't be recovered. But what you didn't see was what I was doing while you were waiting. You thought the delay meant denial. But in my kingdom, delay often means protection. There were things you asked for that I said not yet to. Not because you were unworthy, but because I was guarding you. I was sheltering your future from being prematurely exposed. There were doors that remained shut because what was behind them wasn't yet ready for you, or you weren't yet ready to carry what was waiting. You don't know how many traps were set behind what looked like opportunity. You don't know how many connections I severed that would have drained your spirit. You don't know how many paths I rerouted to preserve the purity of your calling. I saw what you couldn't see. I heard conversations you were never meant to hear. I discerned motives that never made it to your ears. And because of that, I hid you. I concealed you beneath my covering while I worked out the things you would one day walk into. And though it felt lonely, though it tested your patience, though it stretched your understanding, I was doing it out of love. I wasn't delaying your life. I was preserving your purpose. And now, as things begin to open, you'll feel it not just in timing, but in safety. You'll notice how the doors that open now don't require you to compromise to walk through. How the relationships I bring now don't leave you empty, but sharpen your spirit. How the opportunities now match the maturity you've gained through the waiting. That's how you will know the delay wasn't punishment. It was providence. I didn't stall you, I saved you. And now with divine precision, I'm leading you out of preservation and into presentation. Not to prove anything to people, but to prove that what I kept hidden, I've also made holy. So trust this moment. Trust that what felt like being forgotten was actually you being set apart. And now what I preserved, I will release fully, safely, on time. From hidden to holy, there were seasons where you looked around and couldn't understand why others were being elevated, promoted, and publicly affirmed while you remained in the background. Doing the work, staying faithful, carrying dreams that seemed to sleep under silence. You watched as doors opened for others, as voices louder than yours received invitations, as platforms you longed for stayed just out of reach. And though you tried to rejoice, though you kept showing up in secret, though your hands never stopped building, your heart quietly wondered, "Why not me yet, Lord?" Let me answer now, not to scold, but to reveal what I was doing all along. I wasn't overlooking you. I was hiding you, not as punishment, but as protection. because the promise I've placed in you is weighty, sacred, and deeply tied to purpose, not popularity. I didn't want it exposed before your roots could hold the weight of its visibility. I didn't want your identity to become tangled in affirmation that wasn't rooted in truth. I didn't want you to be celebrated for something you hadn't yet been fully formed to carry. So I concealed you in the quiet. I kept you in the shadows, not because you lacked value, but because your value needed space to deepen. And while you were hidden, I was busy working on your heart, your discernment, your posture, your resilience. I was detoxing your spirit from needing to be seen. I was teaching you to crave intimacy with me over the validation of crowds. And now the time of hiding is drawing to a close. You'll begin to notice how the same rooms that once closed to you are now opening on their own. You'll feel the shift, not of striving, but of being invited. You won't have to knock down doors. They'll recognize the weight you carry and open because you've been prepared. This time, you'll enter as one who's anchored, not chasing applause, not seeking proof, but simply walking in what I always intended. The visibility will come, but now it won't own you. It won't distort you. It won't pull you away from me, because you've been hidden long enough to know that being seen by me is always enough. So when they ask, "Where did you come from?" your answer will not be pride, it will be peace. You will say, "I was hidden, and now I'm released." And that release will not just elevate you, it will reveal me. Because everything I hid, I did so for my glory. And now what I protected, I will present. There were seasons where the stillness around you was deafening, where it felt like your prayers returned unanswered, where your obedience didn't produce applause, and where your words echoed into what seemed like an empty void. You questioned the point of your persistence. You asked if your voice even mattered. You wondered if your calling had somehow been put on pause. Yet, even in that quiet, you did not stop speaking life. You whispered truth over yourself when no one else affirmed it. You spoke my promises over dry ground, even when there was no visible fruit. You kept prophesying healing while still carrying your own wounds. That silence was not wasted. It was sacred training. I wasn't withholding a response. I was shaping resonance. I wasn't ignoring your voice. I was giving it depth. In the stillness, your sound was being strengthened. What once trembled with doubt has now been refined into clarity. The silence taught you how to speak from the Spirit, not from noise. It taught you how to listen with more than your ears, how to discern with more than intellect, how to respond with wisdom instead of reaction. And now, because you stayed faithful in the quiet, I am releasing your voice with new authority. When you speak now, you will not just be heard, you will be felt. The echo of heaven will ride on your words. They will carry the weight of someone who has been through the silence and did not let it steal their song. Your voice will cut through confusion, not because you shout louder, but because your words are rooted in revelation, not reaction. There is a power coming from your mouth now that wasn't there before, not born from charisma, but from consecration. You paid a price in the silence. You stayed when speaking felt futile, and now I trust you to carry my sound. You'll speak and see things shift, not because you've mastered vocabulary, but because you've been mastered by my Spirit. The stillness forged something in you that storms never could. Now when you open your mouth, it will carry rain where others only bring noise. You've been quiet long enough, not because I forgot you, but because I was forming you. And now when you speak, the silence will no longer be your prison. It will be your proof. Proof that you don't speak for approval. You speak from alignment. Let your voice rise. I've anointed it through stillness. Now release what I've deposited in secret. The silence made you sharp. Now your words will set captives free. The movement of restoration. You kept moving forward, even when it felt like pieces of you were falling off along the way. You kept showing up, even when the weight of disappointment sat heavy on your chest. You kept giving, loving, building, even when you were secretly grieving the things that slipped through your hands without explanation. You've watched dreams drift, opportunities vanish, and relationships unravel. And you didn't always understand why. You just knew you couldn't stop. Even in the ache, you continued. Even when it didn't make sense, you trusted. What you didn't realize in those moments was that while you were walking through loss, I was walking beside you with restoration in my hands. I saw everything. I recorded what others overlooked. I counted every cost, not as a debt to shame you, but as a divine ledger that heaven would one day repay. That day is now. Restoration is not a far-off hope. It's a present decree. I am not just giving back what was taken. I am returning it multiplied, purified, and aligned with my perfect plan. What seemed gone forever is not beyond my reach. What looked like it died will live again. Not in the same form, but in a better one. I am restoring your energy where you've been drained. I am restoring your joy where grief dulled your light. I am restoring your confidence where criticism cut deep. I am restoring time not by rewinding the clock, but by redeeming what the enemy tried to waste. Nothing is too far gone for me. You thought the losses were the end of a story, but they were the setup for a new one. You didn't stop loving me when things fell apart. And now I will show you what happens when love like that is honored. You will look around and find beauty rising in the very places where pain once reigned. I am rebuilding where things broke. I am filling where things felt empty. I am restoring relationships that were meant to return, and releasing you from those that were never part of your future. I am healing wounds you stopped praying about. I'm reviving dreams you thought you buried out of necessity. This isn't compensation for your suffering. It's the natural overflow of a father who never forgets what his child has surrendered. Watch as what was lost is returned in unexpected ways. Not to bring nostalgia, but to launch you into your next. Restoration doesn't mean a return to the past. It means I'm weaving something entirely new out of what the enemy thought he destroyed. And you, yes, you who stayed faithful while bleeding, will now be the first to taste the fruit of that restoration. Others will marvel. They'll say, "How did this come back to life?" And you will say, "Because I kept going and my God never forgot." The restoration begins now, not as a moment, but as a movement. Let it unfold, let it fill you, let it speak louder than every loss. This is what I do. I restore what others walk away from. And I've never walked away from you. There was a stretch of time that felt like a dismantling, where everything stable seemed to shift. Where what you thought you could rely on was stripped away. You looked around and saw ruins where there used to be rhythm. You felt like all the progress you made had collapsed beneath the weight of unexpected trials. In that place, you questioned not only the season, but yourself. You asked, "What if I never recover? What if this loss defines me?" But what you didn't yet understand is that what felt like destruction was actually construction. I wasn't tearing down your life. I was digging deeper foundations. Everything I allowed to be removed was space. I needed to pour something eternal into you. You thought you were being reduced, but I was multiplying you, widely, intentionally, eternally. The season was not a tomb. It was a womb. What looked like death was a birthing process for the legacy I'm now unfolding through you. You see, your legacy isn't being formed in the spotlight. It's not made of applause or accomplishments. Your legacy is being shaped in the choices no one else saw. In the forgiveness you extended when bitterness was easier. In the prayers you whispered while surrounded by silence. In the moments you didn't run when everything inside you wanted to escape. That is what builds something lasting. That is what I used to speak into generations you will never meet. You kept showing up. You kept loving when you were empty. You kept obeying when the path disappeared. And because of that, you became a vessel I can trust. Not just for this moment, but for what's to come long after. Your legacy is not about what you collect. It's about what you've carried through the fire and still laid at my feet. The integrity you preserved, the compassion you cultivated, the truth you refused to water down. That's what heaven calls wealth. And now I'm expanding your reach. Not just so you can be known, but so what I planted in you during the hardest stretch can now multiply through others. What you thought would end your story has now become the opening line of what I'm going to do through your name. Not a name built by ambition, but one made holy through surrender. People will not just remember what you did, they will remember how you made them feel like. My presence, they will speak of your consistency, your courage, your calm in the storm, and they'll feel it because it's real, because it was built in tears, not theory, because it was born in prayer, not performance. And I will use it, I will spread it, and I will seal it. You will look back, not with sorrow, but with awe. Not because the pain didn't hurt, but because you will see how I wove power into it. The season that felt like your ending has become the foundation of a legacy you didn't even know you were building. Keep going. The world may not see it yet, but all of heaven does. And I will make sure it speaks long after your season has shifted. Because this was never just about you. It was about the legacy of surrender, echoing through generations. The reward of purity. You've lived through seasons where you made the quiet, costly choice. The decision to honor me when no one was watching, to remain honest when compromise seemed easier, to love without recognition, and to serve without applause. And in those moments, you felt invisible, not because you lacked value, but because your heart chose obedience over optics. You saw others rise quickly by cutting corners. You watched influence grow where integrity had been exchanged for attention. And you silently wondered, does purity still matter? Let me answer you with clarity that shakes the dust off your soul. Yes, it matters. It always has, and now I'm honoring it openly. You didn't protect your name for attention. You protected it for me. You didn't guard your heart out of fear. You did it from reverence. You didn't walk away from temptation because it wasn't strong. You walked away because my presence meant more. That posture, that pattern, that purity, it has spoken louder in heaven than any performance ever could on earth. I wrote it down. I counted every time you said no to what glittered but wasn't gold. I stood beside you when it cost you relationships, when it led to misunderstanding, when it isolated you from circles you once longed to belong to. And though you questioned whether you were doing the right thing, your spirit stayed soft and your eyes stayed fixed. You didn't bow to the pressure. You didn't chase platforms, you chased me. And now the reward is coming, not just in what I give, but in what I release through you. I'm about to cause what was planted in secret to flourish in public, not for vanity, not for show, but because the world needs to see what it looks like when someone chooses holiness in an age of compromise. They will look and wonder how you carry such favor, how you speak with such weight, how you move with such peace, and they won't realize it's the fruit of purity long preserved in silence. You don't owe them an explanation. Let your life speak. Let your spirit announce what your words never had to. I'm crowning you now, not with status, but with substance. You are dripping in unseen oil, and now I am making it visible. You didn't run ahead, you waited. You didn't demand your moment, you prepared for it. And now that it's here, it won't feel like striving, it will feel like rest. It won't feel like promotion, it will feel like purpose. This is what I give to those who choose me in the quiet. To those who walk away from shortcuts and remain faithful when no one is affirming them. You didn't just protect your heart, you preserved your calling. And now I trust you to carry more. Not because of your perfection, but because of your purity. Not because of your influence, but because of your intimacy. What you stewarded in the shadows is now being entrusted with sunlight. What you laid down for me, I now return with overflow, not for reward's sake, but because your heart is ready to carry it well. So walk forward, child. You didn't miss anything. You didn't fall behind. You didn't waste your yes. The reward of purity is not only near, it's now. Let it rise. Let it be seen. Let me shine through the life that refused to trade sacred for surface. The unveiling. Everything you've walked through has brought you to this threshold, this quiet but mighty turning point. And though you felt like you were nearing the end of yourself, what you're truly standing in is the beginning of something I authored long before the pain, long before the weight, long before the struggle ever touched your life. What you called the end, I have always called the unveiling. You're not being dismissed, you're being revealed. The covering that protected you is now being removed. Not to expose you to harm, but to reveal the brilliance I've buried inside you. You didn't always understand the delay. You didn't always agree with the process, but you stayed. You remained. You surrendered your timeline, your plans, your pride, and your need to be seen. And because you've walked with me through the valley, through the silence, through the storm, I am now bringing you into the fullness of what I've been writing on the walls of your spirit. This isn't a new idea. It's a divine unveiling of what's been there all along. Hidden in the folds of obedience and soaked in the oil of endurance. You're not stepping into something random. You're stepping into what I wrote in eternity, now released into time. And when others see what's emerging from your life, they'll call it sudden. They'll say you came from nowhere. But I will know. And you will know that this moment has been forming for years in the unseen. Every chapter has led here. Every detour was a cutout toward destiny. Every time you questioned me, yet still chose to walk forward, I was scripting glory into the parts you didn't yet understand. And now that script is being revealed line by line. It won't overwhelm you. It will unfold with peace because this time you're not trying to become something. You're simply unveiling what I already planted. This is not your end. It is my evidence. The evidence that I finish what I start. The evidence that obedience is never wasted. The evidence that I use the weak to carry weighty glory. You didn't write this story alone. I authored it with love, and I am unveiling it with power. So don't fear what's next. Don't hold back out of old pain. Don't second guess your readiness. I've seen every page before you read a word. And now it's time. Time to walk boldly, not into performance, but into prophecy fulfilled. You are the living proof that what I promise I complete. Let the unveiling begin. The unveiling continues. This is just the beginning. I'm not rushing this unveiling, not because I'm withholding, but because I'm protecting the sacredness of what I've built inside of you. If I revealed everything all at once, the weight of visibility might feel heavier than the roots of your identity could carry. So, I'm doing it layer by layer, not to tease you, but to teach you that pressure isn't the same as purpose. You're not being promoted for attention. You're being positioned for impact. And that impact needs to rest on stability, not speed. It's why I've slowed the process. It's why I've held back certain opportunities until your peace could stand stronger than your ambition. I am not late. I'm deliberate. And this kind of unveiling doesn't produce burnout. It produces overflow. This unveiling is not about a spotlight. It's about healing. When I release you into rooms, it won't be for applause, it will be for purpose. There are people waiting on the other side of your obedience who need your presence, not your performance. Your voice will carry the sound of freedom, not because you rehearsed it, but because you lived it. Your eyes will reflect compassion, not because you studied it, but because you wept and still believed. You won't step in to take over. You will step in to restore what others lost in their battles. I've entrusted you with restoration, not as a task, but as a testimony. What healed you will now heal others. And that is why I am unveiling you now, because what flows through you is ready to restore what has been broken too long. There will be no need to fight for visibility, to force open doors, or to insert yourself where you've not been called. Where I have planted my glory, I make space. You won't have to market yourself when my favor has already marked you. This unveiling will be marked by grace, not by grinding. Your presence will carry a fragrance that cannot be imitated because it comes from me. And wherever my fragrance goes, honor follows. You've already been seen by heaven, and that's what gives you authority in the earth. The weight of your surrender has opened doors no effort ever could. Let me lead. Let my glory go before you. This unveiling isn't meant to separate you. It's meant to send you. I didn't develop your calling to place you on a pedestal. I refined you so that you could carry the strength of those still crawling. I'm not raising you to shine alone. I'm raising you to become a light that guides others home. Your elevation will never look like isolation. It will look like compassion wrapped in boldness. You'll find yourself drawn to the broken, the misunderstood, the forgotten, because you remember what it felt like to be in those shoes. And that remembrance is holy. It keeps you grounded. It keeps you grateful. It keeps you aligned with my heart. You will rise, yes, but only to reach. You will ascend, but always to lift. That's the kind of leader I'm revealing in you. When the curtain lifts and others begin to see what I've placed in you, it won't be the finale. It will be the commissioning. This moment isn't a conclusion. My child, what you have heard today is not the end. It is only the beginning. Every word released here is a piece of the greater blueprint I am unfolding in your life. Do not walk away thinking this was a one-time encounter. Each time you return, I will meet you with fresh oil, deeper clarity, and stronger confirmation. Stay connected, subscribe, and keep coming back, because the next word I release here may be the exact key your spirit has been crying out for. Do not miss it, for I am not finished with you yet. Amen.